Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, everybody. We are here for Voir Dire Day. We're going to have a lot in store, and I already have the court feed pulled up. I think they got a little bit of a late start here. So let's just talk about where we were at going into this, right? So where this sort of stemmed from was the Commonwealth's motion from not last week, but the week before on Thursday, which was the last court day of that week. The Commonwealth's motion to exclude expert testimony from this Dr. Marie Russell. And the following Monday, which was Monday of last week, I think, they argued that, and essentially the Commonwealth wanted it kept out because it was a late, the discovery was late on this, right? And Judge Bev ruled that she wanted to do voir dire. So they scheduled the voir dire for today. And from what I understand, we will also be hearing not just from Dr. Marie Russell, who will be providing testimony as to the nature of the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm, but I understand we will also be hearing from, drum roll please, witnesses who testified for the federal grand jury as part of the federal investigation into this case. We don't know who it's going to be. We don't know what they're going to say. Actually, no one knows what they're going to say because the grand jury proceedings are kept private. And these are witnesses that the defense intends or hopes to call. So from what I understand, we will be hearing from them as well. And the defense is so certain that without even hearing their testimony, they know they want to call them, but they're going to hear it. Essentially, the voir dire in this case is really to benefit the Commonwealth, because these are all going to be witnesses that the defense intends to call that we're going to hear from today. So, and the reason it's happening again is so the Commonwealth can try to object or whatever the fuck Lolly intends to do. So happy you are here, Abby. Happy to see you, my friend. Oh, it was bad. It was very bad. It was very, very, very bad. I'll quote Runkle. He said of Trooper Paul, something like, what was it? You could take a bowling ball and stick a nose on it and it would be more competent than this guy, among other things. Good morning, Candace. Shout out to my friends here. Okay, so this is the beginning of the day. So let's get into some of this, see what's going on in court.
Ms. Reed.
And a reminder, there's no jury today.
All of the witnesses here, Mr. Jackson?
He has the day off.
I'd like to hear from Dr. Russell first. Are you both prepared to?
All right, I'm so sorry, I could not hear you.
I would like to hear from Dr. Russell first. Is that her name?
So,
Dr. Russell, yes, the order would be.
It's interesting. So you can see there's fewer people here, at least from what we see so far, but we do still have John O'Keefe's brother and his sister-in-law. Again, there's no jury today. I mean, I guess in my mind, it's still surprising that it's not packed still, right? Because voir dire, but like there's still room in the courtroom.
Okay, then that's good because that's the order I prefer. So, all right. Do you have a CV for her? Good morning. Morning, Tori. Do you have a CV I could look at for her, please?
Oh, wow, Miss Little has her hair in a ponytail. I think that might be the first time I've seen it. Looks nice.
I do. Yes, I do.
And she has not written a report?
She's not.
You have a nice screensaver on that.
All right, let's bring her in, please.
Yay, here we go.
Before we get started,
Oh.
I get an understanding. You started to say it at sidebar the other day, and you said you wanted to put that off to get to the witnesses. But I need a little bit of an understanding of what the court's expectations are. My understanding of voir dire, this seems to be unusual in terms of the timing of it.
The understanding of the voir dire is this is for the Commonwealth's motion to exclude this testimony. All right? That's what we're here for,
Yes.
the Rule 14 violation.
Is that the same with Dr. Wolfe and Dr. Rentschler?
Well, I thought that would help both of you. The Commonwealth has nothing on that, and you say you haven't been able to even talk to them at all about this case.
That's correct.
So I want to find out if they have any credible, competent evidence to put forward. So we'll have a voir dire on them as well. But
So
for
that-
Dr. Russell, what we're doing here today is there's, an alleged well, let's just, there appears to me to be a violation of the reciprocal discovery obligations of defense counsel regarding Dr. Russell.
Right.
So let's hear from her today to see what the appropriate remedy is for this violation.
So my intention is to ask her so I have, the court understands my sort of guardrails. My intention is to ask her what her qualifications are, which is that's the basis for voir dire. And that's where I'm going to stop. I'm not intending to ask her what her opinions are, conclusions. I'm going to ask her if she's come to opinions and conclusions, but I don't want to have to examine her concerning her full opinions or full conclusions, what she's based those conclusions on. It's unfair. We've provided the defense everything that the prosecution, everything that we need to provide to them in terms of disclosure. They've got the equivalent of a report. They've got a summary of what she's going to testify to.
When was that provided? My order was 1 week from the start of trial, right?
Well, we didn't, Your Honor, in fairness, they didn't even finish their discovery 1 week before the start of trial. So it's a little unfair for us to be put on a seat.
1 week from the filing of the certificate of compliance.
Well, I don't know when I can't remember. My co-counsel indicates it was the day before trial.
Okay.
So during the course of the trial is a dynamic thing. During the course of the trial, I did not know who Dr. Marie Russell was at the time that they filed their certificate of compliance. We then attempted to and did give them the reciprocal discovery that we were obligated to do after they filed their certificate of compliance.
When?
Within 3 days of that.
Okay. Couple thoughts. So he's saying we know that this came in late, right? We know that they filed this they mentioned they were going to bring her in as a witness. This all happened kind of late, and that's why there was this reciprocal discovery violation. So he's saying they didn't even know she existed. I'm wondering, for those of you guys who watched any Debt Be Heard coverage, whether it was me or anyone else at the time or whatever, you might remember that something similar happened in Debt Be Heard, where there were a couple witnesses who were not the Depp's team did not know of their existence, right? But they were watching the trial or heard about the trial and then reached out and contacted them to be like, hey, I can testify about this. And they had to do the same thing. They had to do voir dire, and it was a whole thing. And Elaine was all pissed. But I'm wondering if it's a similar thing, because it's interesting that Jackson is saying we didn't even know she existed. I'm wondering if this is a similar situation where this doctor was watching the trial or heard about the trial and reached out actually to them. But we shall find out.
We've been giving them information prior to that, but at least within 3 days of that. We've continued.
We are still.
The record's clear. We've continued to get additional discovery from.
No. This is not the defense's case. We're still in the prosecution's case in chief. The defense does not have incompetent people yet, to our knowledge. I think you were here a little bit yesterday. That was Trooper Paul. That was a mess. And that was the prosecution's quote unquote expert witness for accident reconstruction. So we are still in the prosecution's case in chief. The reason they're doing this voir dire for the defense witnesses is because the prosecution should be wrapping up their case in chief soon. So prior to the defense starting their case in chief, they need to know who can testify and who can't and what they can testify to, if anything. And so that's why this has to be done ahead of time. So the prosecution may rest, because there's no court tomorrow. Prosecution may rest Thursday, may rest Friday, but we do know that they're supposed to be wrapping up shortly. So this has to be done before the defense can present their case in chief.
From the Commonwealth in notices of discovery throughout the trial.
Good question, though.
They have not finished. In fact, during the trial, they interviewed Jim McCabe, apparently, had a full interview with her. Lieutenant Tully took a report, dated the report, and then they held on to that report until after she testified. The interview, the report, and the completion of the report were all done before her testimony.
Do you need to call her again?
Your Honor, that's not and I think the court understands, that's not my point. My point is not I need to call Jennifer McCabe back. I've done the damage that needs to be done on Jennifer McCabe. The point is,
I'm sorry, I missed that. You've what?
I've done the damage that needed to be done on Jennifer McCabe. I don't need to call her back. The point is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The Commonwealth doesn't get to stand in the position of piecemealing and feeding us information, reports, discovery throughout the course of the trial. And by the way, when we then got seminal information about an expert that we did not know about, never met, never heard of, within 3 days of that, we provide everything that we have.
So that's Dr. Marie Russell.
They can't then turn around and say, oh, well, it's all the defense's fault. So we want to have a voir dire, which means the euphemism for that voir dire is we want to have two bites at the apple.
Okay.
We want to be able to completely cross-examine her, then go back to our expert And if she testifies, cross-examine her again after consulting with our expert. That's 2 bites at the apple, and that's not fair. If the court wants to hear whether or not Dr. Marie Russell is qualified to testify about the arm injuries, that, I believe, is the parameters, the proper parameters of the voir dire, and that's what I'm prepared to do today. But I wasn't planning on getting into the substance of her testimony because that's been provided. And I don't think Mr. Lally should be able to get into the substance of her testimony because he knows what the substance is because, like I said, that's been provided.
All right, so I disagree. I'm going to hear from the Commonwealth on this. Is it Ms. McLaughlin or Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, just briefly in regard to what counsel was referencing with Ms. McCabe, it was not a full interview by Lieutenant Tully. It was a, and I don't have it on me at this moment, but I can give the court a copy of that report. But essentially it was Ms. McCabe met with Lieutenant Tully, looked at some video and was asked a single question. That report wasn't available. I didn't have it until after Ms. McCabe testified, but it was given to counsel prior to Lieutenant Tully testifying, and there were no questions asked of Lieutenant Tully in regard to that.
Yeah, I thought that.
My issue, and I wasn't asking for a voir dire as it proposed to, as it relates to Dr. Russell, is that we first heard of Dr. Russell on May 21st, which was, I think, 6 weeks into trial.
Right, so that's what I asked, and you told me it was 3 days after the beginning of trial, Mr. Jackson.
Your Honor, I said this at sidebar the other day, and I just said it again today. I let the Commonwealth and the court know about Dr. Marie Russell 3 days after I learned about her, which was the 17th of May. I think it was the 17th of May. I had never heard of her. I didn't know who she was. We made contact. I determined that she would be useful.
So he's saying it was a really quick
in terms of
turnaround,
the,
actually.
specifically the injuries to Jonathan's arm. I then had one conversation with her, then immediately, within 3 days of that, turned that information over to the prosecution. So I didn't say that I gave this over 3 days of the trial. That's not what I said.
All right, but you were ordered to do it. Ms. Giannetti, what was the date? What, you had 1 week from when?
The day before the trial. So it would have been, I believe, April 15th. So what we knew as of that date, we were required to turn over.
All right, I need to take a quick recess.
What? All right.
Okay, so they have already a recess. Holy shit. All right, let's. Oh, that was quick. Okay, here we go.
Jim, the Commonwealth's motion, the Commonwealth's renewed motion. First. Never mind, Jim.
Paper 360.
I got it. Yeah. All right, so the Commonwealth has moved that I exclude the testimony of Dr. Russell based on a violation of the reciprocal discovery obligations of the defense. So I do find that there is a violation of the reciprocal discovery obligations of Rule 14. And I'm quoting from the notes, the importance of this, the reporter's notes to the old rule. And as you all know, we're in the process of updating that rule, but the very integrity of the judicial system and public confidence in the system depend on full disclosure of all the facts within the framework of the rules of evidence. To ensure that justice is done, it is imperative to the function of courts that compulsory process be available for the production of evidence needed either by the prosecution or the defense. So what we're here to do today is decide a remedy for this violation. And that's why we're having a voir dire. I am not prohibiting the Commonwealth from anything on their examination of witness Mr. Jackson. The alternative is she doesn't testify. So the Commonwealth has not received the appropriate discovery from this witness. So we're going to have a voir dire, and they can ask her anything that they think they need to ask her. So those are the parameters of this morning.
As long as I know the guardrails, that's fine. I just to close the loop on the record. My understanding, and this Little can probably speak to this more intelligently than I can, but during the middle of trial, there was a witness that we had never heard of, we did not know and didn't have a report for,
Who is that?
Dr. Fowler, F-A-L-L-E-R.
Okay.
The court members is buried in the middle of about 75 witnesses. So he testified to alcohol levels, et cetera, and protocols at which institution? At Good Samaritan. And we didn't have that information either. We didn't throw a fit. They said we were going to provide this information in a timely fashion. As soon as we know that we're going to call him, he's going to be on our witness list. We didn't know one way or the other what he was going to say. We didn't have a report, and we went on about our business. That's what we were doing as well. And by the way, I would note that the notes and report under Rule 14 require disclosure of information you have. I just don't want the court to think that we were sitting on information that we didn't turn over.
No, I'm not saying that. It's just, this isn't as if it was something that the Commonwealth brought up and you needed to scramble. This is entirely of the defense position. So,
I understand.
all right, so that's the big difference. So why don't you go ahead and call her?
Okay.
Yay, here we go.
Yes.
So now we're getting into the first witness to testify today. I already made a little banner thing. Here, let's just go forward a little bit until she comes in.
I do.
Here we go. Excellent. All right, so this is Dr. Marie Russell for the defense here. Voir dire, no jury, like it says on the banner. So she's going to be testifying
I'm
about
going to ask you to keep your voice up, speak right into that microphone, doctor,
potentially
okay?
the scratches on
Thank you. All
Donna.
right, go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes. Marie Russell, Russell.
And I'm going to echo what the court just indicated. The air conditioners are on, so please.
Good morning,
use the
Super
elevator
Planner Girl.
as
Happy to
possible.
see you.
Maneuver the microphone however you need to, okay?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that in all caps. I
Russell,
wonder
what
if
do you
it'll
do for a
still work.
I am a retired emergency physician and forensic pathologist.
And tell me what education you have, going all the way back to the beginning, that qualifies you as an emergency physician and former pathologist before you retired.
Okay. Well,
Oh, it worked. Never mind.
I've had about at least 16 years of formal education beyond high school. Initially, I started at MIT.
So already, let's compare that to Trooper, what was it, Trooper Paul.
Where I did my pre-med courses. I had always wanted to be a physician.
This is gonna
And
be a
so,
real
so I went to MIT for a year, took pre-med courses. And then I had an unusual life event in that my mother came down with cancer and she subsequently passed away. During the time away, so I took some time off from school. During that period of time, I decided to explore another interest of mine, which was law enforcement. And so I took some courses in law enforcement and I became a full-time police officer here in Massachusetts.
Wow,
Were you at
that is wild.
That was 1972 to
She was a police
1974.
officer in Massachusetts.
Did you go to the police
Wow.
academy?
I did. When once I
Wow,
became a
Wow.
police officer here in Massachusetts,
was not
I
expecting.
attended the Boston Police Academy where I
Holy
graduated.
shit!
What year was that?
That was in 1977.
During the
Holy
course of your training
shit!
as a police officer, did you have any
Oh,
special?
I just have to pause this to say, I hope to God she's not. I mean, she probably hasn't. Once they got in touch with each other, and there was a potential that she might testify, I would imagine she did not watch any of this trial. If she had been before, I don't know yet. But I was going to say, I hope to God she does not see what's been going on with the law enforcement in this case, because can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Realized training in hit and
Wow.
run accidents and
Right?
investigations.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And which agency did you work for as a sworn peace officer?
I worked for the city of Malden full-time for 7 years.
That would be from 1977 to 1984, approximately.
Correct.
During that time, did you continue your education in any way?
I did. So I took as many courses as I could from the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council, which included a course, a several-day course in hit and run accident investigation. I
Oh,
took
how funny.
courses in forensic photography and
Some of
numerous
those
other things.
are probably similar.
And then and I also at the same
Right.
time
Okay.
continued to go to college, and I did that part-time, where I eventually got a bachelor's degree of science in psychology with highest honors.
What
Wow.
institution was that from?
That was from Northeastern University.
And that was a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology?
I think it was a bachelor of science.
Wow.
Subsequent to your Bachelor of Science degree from Northeastern, did you also advance your education further, formally?
Subsequent to so yes, so I decided that I did want to pursue a medical career, and so I then attended medical school, University of Massachusetts Medical School, full time for 4 years.
Did you ultimately get a degree, an MD degree from UMass.
Yes, a Doctor of Medicine degree in 1987.
So you were there from 1983 to 1987, is that right?
That is correct.
And did you do a residency?
I did. I did 2 residencies, actually. Most people do 1, but I did 2. I did my first residency was a combined internship and residency for 4 years. And I did that in Los Angeles at Los Angeles County Medical Center, which is a very big trauma center and what I would consider the Bellevue of the West Coast. Very busy.
You say that just because of the volume at USC Medical Center?
That is correct.
Is it one of the busiest medical trauma centers in the country?
Yes.
You were there from 1987 to 1991, is that right?
I did my ER internship and residency during those years. Yes, there.
During that time, were you seeing patients?
Oh, yes.
You were treating patients?
Wow.
Lots of them.
You were attending to patients?
I was a trainee, so I was seeing as many patients as we could. There was always a waiting room full of patients, and yeah, so I saw many patients during that time period.
Did you indicated a second residency? Tell me about that.
Okay, so I still realized I had an interest in forensics, and so I decided that I wanted to also train in forensic pathology. So I did a second residency in anatomic pathology, 2 years, followed by forensic pathology fellowship at the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office for 2 years.
And the years, if that's 4 years, that would be from 1991 to 1995 approximately?
That is correct.
Tell me what your experience was as a fellow at the Los Angeles Coroner's Office, Los Angeles County Coroner's Office.
Yes, well, it also was a very busy coroner's office. And so every day there would be cases. I probably did at least 2 cases a day, most days, and plus conferences and educational opportunities. But the interesting thing about being a fellow is they try to give you a wide assortment of cases. So, for instance, I not only saw numerous victims of gunshot violence and stabbings, but I saw numerous victims of motor vehicle accidents and natural death, overdoses. And then if there was an unusual case, it usually went to the fellow, because the fellow was also being supervised. So,
did any of those unusual cases, we'll get more into this in just a second, but did any of those unusual cases include animal attacks?
yes.
Wow.
Did you become a professor, an educator at any point?
Yes. So during my 29 years at LA County Hospital, during the last 25 of those, I was a assistant professor or an instructor, but mostly an assistant professor. And what that meant is that I was responsible for overseeing the care that was provided by the interns and residents. So when a patient would come into the hospital, the emergency room, they were oftentimes usually seen by the intern or resident, and then I would go and subsequently see that patient also. So, and that was in addition to my own cases. So I'd see my cases and their cases.
And that was at LAUSC, correct?
That is correct. And
Can I ask a quick question?
yes.
LAUSC, for those of us who are not necessarily familiar with it, is that associated with the University of Southern California Medical Center?
Yes.
That's the school, in other words, the site.
Yes. So it stands for Los Angeles County / University of Southern California Medical Center.
And that's where you were an assistant professor for the majority of the rest of your career.
Correct.
Were you also an assistant or an adjunct professor at Cal State Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay. For how long were you an adjunct professor there?
I believe that was 4 or 5 years. And I taught criminalistics, forensic medicine there.
As an attending physician in the ER, in other words, a supervising physician in the ER, can you tell us what some of your duties and responsibilities included, especially as it pertains to trauma? And then I'll get more specific in just a second.
Okay. Well, so I would oversee the care of all the patients that came in during a particular shift. And that would include medical patients and trauma patients. And as I mentioned, it was a very busy trauma center. So we had lots of trauma patients, including the types of violence I described earlier that I saw at the coroner's office, but lots of motor vehicle accident victims because there was a highway there right nearby. There were a couple of highways. So a wide variety of accidents.
Did your supervision include assessing, diagnosing, and treating patients?
Correct.
In terms of the middle part of that, diagnosis, was part of your job to determine the cause of injuries or to at least assess the cause of injuries?
Yes, and I took that on a little bit more because I was interested in the forensics aspect of the injuries.
The forensic aspect?
Yes.
Okay. During your time at LAUSC, even after you left the Los Angeles Coroner's Office as a fellow, did you continue to stay in contact with the coroner's office and have a relationship with the coroner's office as a supervising physician?
I continued to stay in contact with the coroner's office, and I used to attend their conferences as often as I could, not as a supervising physician, but as a physician and a graduate of their program.
During your tenure at LAUSC, did you ever become the director of any programs at LAUSC?
Yes,
Does that include the director of Center for Life Support Training?
yes.
What years was that, if you remember?
I don't remember that.
The early 2000s, late 90s?
Yes, that sounds about right.
Okay.
And we would conduct lots of courses, including trauma, life support courses.
Did LAUSC incorporate a quality improvement program
Yes,
within their institution?
yes,
Did you become a director of that as well?
yes,
So you were director of Center for Life Support Training and director of LAUSC Medical Center Quality Improvement. Is that right?
the quality improvement was for the emergency department.
All right.
Yes,
And did you also become the director for Jail Medical Services?
yes.
What is the association between LAUSC and the very, very expansive jail system in Los Angeles County?
So LA County Hospital was unique in that they many, many years ago developed a jail, what they called a jail ward, which was a combined inpatient, outpatient, and ER. So there was a dedicated jail ER.
Wow, that's
And that has been in existence for probably about 70 years now. And patients that were placed under arrest by either LA sheriffs, LAPD, California Highway Patrol, or any of the municipal agencies in the area, and I think there were about 70 or more municipal agencies, could bring their patients to the LA County jail ward where the patients would get treatment.
Ultimately, you became the director of that entire program, correct?
Yes,
wow.
Did you also work with the State Medical Board of California in any capacity?
yes.
Tell us about that.
For about 7 years, I worked part-time for the California Medical Board as a physician assigned to one of their enforcement teams. And I did that 1 day a week, and I did my other job at the county hospital the other 40 hours a week.
So you didn't take off time from your duties as an ER physician, as an emergency physician. This was in addition to you being an emergency physician.
Wow.
That is correct.
You hold the title of Chief Medical Executive for the California State Prison System, specifically at Corcoran.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I retired from LA County Hospital, and I went on to move on to the the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
And what year was that? Did you make that transition?
So 2018 is when I started for the state prison system,
Okay.
and I worked there for 5 years as director of their medical service
So you
in
were-
Corcoran.
I'm sorry. So for that prison, within that system, you were the chief medical executive for the entire agency, correct?
That is correct. For the entire prison.
Understood. Are you board certified in emergency medicine?
Yes,
Are you a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
yes,
Are you a member of the American Academy of Forensic Science?
yes.
Do you have any publications in the area? And I'm going to be very specific because you've been relatively widely published. Is that right?
How the fuck has she had time for all this?
Some people would say
Same.
yes, some people would say no.
More than a couple of publications
Correct.
and peer-reviewed journals, correct?
Yes,
I want to focus your attention on animal injuries. Have you been published in the area of animal injuries specifically?
yes.
Do you recall those publications?
Yes, they had to do with law enforcement dog bites.
Did you draft an article or co-author an article called Managing Law Enforcement Dog Bites in the ER?
Yes, I was a co-author.
1996.
Sounds right.
And
That's awesome, Abby.
article,
I
Yes.
love all
ultimately
that.
Published
That's
Yes.
and
cool.
ultimately available to be cited by other doctors. And
There you
studied by other
go.
doctors, correct?
Correct.
Did you also author or co-author an article entitled Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites, Injuries, Complications, and Trends?
Yes, I did.
Was that in 1997?
Sounds right.
Was that also peer-reviewed?
Yes,
And that publication was also available for other physicians throughout California and throughout the country to refer to for the study of animal bites and dog bites, correct?
dog bites. Yes.
Dog bites.
I mean, here's the thing, guys.
Concerning animal injuries, during the course of your professional experience, how many
Like-
patients?
Like what this doctor's, resume and experiences, and similar like to what Abby was saying, you want to be a nurse, change your mind, paramedic, computer science, math, then animal science, vet. I mean, all of this, it's a good thing, right? Because look at the wealth of knowledge and experience it gives you it makes a person so unique. Like her background and training and experience makes her really specifically unique to be the perfect expert for this case. And it's incredible that it seems like, again, this is just my thought, is that I wonder, especially since she has ties to California and Massachusetts, I wonder if she heard about this trial and reached out to the defense, similarly to what we saw in Depp v. Heard, being like, hey, I'm the perfect person for this case. but and I of course, I have a lot of interests as well. I have all my degrees in music, but I also love law and study law and taught myself Russian. And, it's learning about different things makes you a more well-rounded person, but also having all that knowledge clearly comes in handy too, if you ever want to testify as an expert.
Have you seen diagnosed
Compared to
and or
Trooper
treated
Paul.
with animal injuries, including dog bites and scratches, if you had to estimate?
Many hundreds.
Would you say it's over or under 1,000?
I would say it's over 500. I don't know because we didn't keep really good records back in the earlier days.
But it's safe to say you've seen hundreds and hundreds and
See,
hundreds.
and I
of dog
appreciate
bites.
she could have
Yes, in my
exaggerated
29 years at
over
LA County
1,000.
Hospital, yes. And my dog bites,
that. Just,
dog bites I took care of and dog bites that the residents took care of. Yes.
she doesn't
So
need to
you've been
bolster
published
her
articles
resume.
and studied, not just seen them, but studied dog bites and dog wounds, correct?
Yes.
Have you qualified as an expert previously in other courts as in
I thought
emergency
she had
medicine?
a million.
Yes.
Have you qualified as an expert in other courts in forensic pathology and wounds?
Yes.
Has that been in both state and federal court?
Yes.
Doctor, were you asked to review certain materials related to this case?
Yes.
And that was in furtherance of coming to, if you could, come to an opinion or a conclusion about injuries to the victim in this case, a person by the name of John O'Keefe.
Yes.
What did you review in anticipation of your determining whether or not you could come to an opinion or a conclusion?
So I reviewed hospital photographs, autopsy photographs, an autopsy report, grand jury testimony from the medical examiner in this case. There may be some other.
Based on
Items.
this,
I just want to ask about that. Do you have notes with you as to what you reviewed?
No.
Okay, so when you say there might be other, you don't.
Well,
If he tells you what you reviewed, you'd know it.
I would recognize it.
All right, but I want to hear it from you. You
Oh,
you
okay.
don't know of anything else that you've reviewed? This is sort of important, Mr. Jackson.
Okay.
Can you think of anything else, doctor,
The
besides
autopsy.
these?
Autopsy photographs, autopsy report, neuropathology report, toxicology report, and the grand jury testimony.
okay, so as you recall, the items that you reviewed include an autopsy report by Dr. Scortibello, correct?
Yes.
A neuropathology report by a doctor named Stonebridge, correct?
Yes.
Toxicological reports associated with the autopsy,
Yes.
grand jury transcripts from Dr. Scortibello,
Yes.
photographs of evidence items, including a gray sweatshirt,
Oh, yes. Yes.
and autopsy photos that were taken attendant to the actual autopsy.
Yes. And photographs that were taken in the hospital. And I reviewed the hospital ER record also.
So in addition to what you just listed, there's also hospital photos separate and apart from the autopsy photos, is that correct?
Yes.
And those hospital photos showed the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, is that right?
Yes.
And you also reviewed emergency room records that are attendant to his initial acceptance into the emergency room on January 29th, 2022, correct?
That's correct.
Based on your review of all of those materials, were you able to confidently come to any conclusions or opinions about the nature of the injuries suffered by John O'Keefe, specifically as they relate to John O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes.
What is your opinion and conclusion concerning those injuries?
Those injuries appear to be consistent with an animal attack.
Can you be more specific in terms of the type of animal, or are you relegated to simply an animal attack?
Well, they are consistent with a large dog attack. There's a combination of both what I consider bite wounds and scratch wounds on the arm. There were also some puncture wounds in that shirt.
And on
So I'm sorry, puncture wounds in the shirt?
Puncture holes
Okay.
in the shirt.
and on what do you base the opinion that the injuries are consistent with dog bite or scratch marks?
So
Well,
wait a
the
second.
patterns. There are several patterns of parallel wounds that
Was she trying to say that those marks on John O'Keefe's arm didn't come from him hitting his arm on the taillight, cracking the taillight, spinning around in the air, doing a pirouette, and then coming back and then side swiping it once it was cracked? Is that what I'm hearing? Am I understanding that correctly? Hi, Black Witter. Happy to see you, my friend. Is that for real, Abby? That's crazy. Abby says my favorite fun fact is telling people that on a quantum level you age slower the higher altitude you live. For real though. Yeah, she is like Dr. Reamer. Yes, definitely is. Yeah. So, it's funny because when we saw those pictures, that's what I said. And I think I think initially I didn't really have any idea, but then I think Runkle, this is way back in the beginning of the trial, was saying it looks like a dog, like if a dog bites in the middle and then latches on with their claws on either side. And I was like, oh my God, that looks exactly like what it is. But we heard some great testimony from Trooper Paul about how it could be the tail light.
Appear to be superficial
Hi, Dean.
scratches that could have been caused by nails or could have been caused by teeth.
Yeah.
That there are different
crazy,
angles
Gabby.
on the arm and different locations on the arm, and but they're generally oriented in a specific direction. And there's also an area, the distal forearm, which is close to the wrist, which
I love
shows
first,
what I
y'all.
believe is an arch area of teeth marks.
That is the first time we've heard anyone use a medical term in relation to where on John O'Keefe's arm they're talking about. We've had every law enforcement officer go up there and demonstrate somewhere on the arm and like move their hand up and down all over the distal. Like she used the word distal. How the fuck have we gotten in? We're in the 8th week of this trial. We've not heard that word yet. I don't think we even heard that from the EMTs. Do you guys remember? I mean, it was such a long time ago, but I don't think we did. I think they were very vague as well about the arm. Just interesting.
And what's the significance of the arch area?
Well, so the arch would be the front area of the jaw of the animal, or the dog in this case, where the teeth tend to be close together and curved. There's a curved pattern to the configuration of the teeth.
I'm gonna have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Doctor, I'm going to show you a series of photographs. Can I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
First, can you describe whether or not you recognize what's depicted in that photograph? Have you seen that photograph before?
Yes, I have.
Is that part of what you reviewed in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes.
What is that a photograph of?
So this is a photograph of the decedent's arm near the elbow. And do you want me to describe what it shows?
Just briefly. An
Okay.
overview of what
And it shows wounds.
Okay. Your Honor, I would ask that be marked as next in order of evidence.
All right. So for this voir dire, we'll have separate evidence, right? Is this an exhibit number in the trial
It
already?
has not been marked yet, so I'm fine with starting over, sort of for the purposes of what your process, Howard.
So this will be a separate voir dire with separate exhibit. Yes.
So it's going to be exhibit 1.
Yes.
Your Honor, I want to move this along. This has been marked, but I think.
Hold on. Okay.
I'm so sorry. This one of the three has already been marked, but if, just for consistency, I'd rather mark it additionally for voir dire.
Need a separate record for the voir dire.
May I approach?
Yes.
This one's already been marked, but I'll remark it.
And if you tell me the exhibit numbers that they are. So you're putting these in now? There's no objection, Mr. Lally?
For purposes of this, no.
Okay. So we'll mark these now, but
May I approach?
yes.
The one with the label 2858 on the bottom has previously been marked in the trial. I would ask that this be marked as the next name order for the voir dire.
But what I want is the exhibit number at the trial.
I'll get that for you. I believe it's exhibit 19.
Okay.
The 19? That's correct. It's 19.
Okay. And is the third one also in evidence, you said?
2 of the 3 have not been marked. I'll as soon as medical report is ready.
She's ready.
May I just establish the foundation?
Yes.
The following 2 photographs that I just showed you, Doctor, do you recognize those?
Yes,
Did you also review those in terms of, in furtherance of coming to your opinions and conclusions?
yes,
Do they also appear to be different photographs of John O'Keefe's arm?
yes.
I would move for the admission of both of those, Your Honor, for purposes of voir dire.
There's been no objection to them, so they're in. They're already marked.
I just need to know which one's 2 and which one's 3. May I approach?
Yes.
With court permission, may I publish
Yes.
Exhibit 2 for voir dire?
Yes.
Is this photograph of the of John O'Keefe's arm?
Yes,
Is this one of the several photographs that you reviewed in coming to your opinions? and
Okay, there we go.
yes.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about this. There should be a laser pointer on the desk.
Okay.
Can you explain for the jurors what it is about the injuries that assisted you in coming to your opinion and conclusion that this is from an animal attack?
Okay, there's several patterns here. So for instance, let's look here right near the elbow, the exterior part of the elbow. There's these 2 linear marks, which appear to be from upper teeth, and 2 punctures below those, which are superficial, meaning they didn't go very deep into the skin, but they appear from the lower teeth. So that's one pattern. There's another pattern close to the shoulder, which shows parallel marks, these 2, and maybe a third one in the middle, parallel marks that are oriented at a certain angle. And these are superficial wounds, which are consistent with teeth marks. They also could be possibly consistent with nail marks, but
With what?
nails from claw, yes. We have some more here, similar from obviously different teeth involved or different claws, and
So I have a question for you.
then over down here, closer to the wrist,
So what do
we
you
have
guys
an unusual pattern of.
What do you guys think? Does this look like dog? Yeah, right. I know. I agree. Hi, Thunder. I'm happy you're here. So here's the thing. This definitely looks like dog to me. So how does this change our understanding of the case, right? Like Chloe came up a lot kind of in the beginning, but then we haven't heard as much about Chloe. It really does add to the questions about what really happened to him, right? We know that Chloe was outside to use the bathroom because it begs the question, did he actually go in the house, right? Or did Chloe come outside? So there's one question. And Chloe's been quote unquote rehomed. Not that she could really tell us what happened, but I don't think we didn't get any straight answers from the Alberts. So no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all, Abby. I agree. Yeah. There's no way. There's no way. Candace, that I believe would have to come from the medical examiner, who is missing in action so far. Yeah, or both. That's a good point. Super Planner Girl, he could have gone inside and the dog could have been outside and there could, yeah. We need to hear from the medical examiner, and I still don't see the Commonwealth calling her, because it would have, everything that they've presented so far would have made so much more sense if the jury had heard from the medical examiner first, right? Because the rest of it, this has all just been so theoretical. Right? That's true, Super Planner Girl. So, and the medical examiner, here's the thing. The medical examiner would be able to tell when those bites happened. Was he alive? Was he dead? Was he hypothermic? Right? Because that would change the way the blood and all that shit happens. I can't speak more intelligently about it from that. I just know they would be able to tell what was his status when those wounds happened. Now, the other thing is, it doesn't look like he tried to pull his arm away, maybe. Maybe the downward motion, like the downward motion could have been his arm was still in the dog. It kind of seems like he would have been standing up and had his arm out to the side and the dog jumped up, right? And that's why you have the teeth in the middle and the claw marks on either side, which would make me think he was probably alive. And then maybe he tried to rip his arm away, and that's why you get those downward motions. Right. Well, remember that was for the Commonwealth, right? So potentially they wouldn't want someone, if the Commonwealth knows that this has to do with the dog, they wouldn't want anyone doing their job correctly and examining the wounds, right? Yeah, she only tested the clothes. See, the thing is like that was a great expert, and garbage in, garbage out. So what she can only test what they give her, and I don't know that she would be someone that would test wounds. And maybe right if it was sent to her lab, but she only tests what they give her. So that's where the Commonwealth can kind of get around potentially evidence coming out that, and it would have been exculpatory potentially too, right? If it was dog. Yeah, Abby, what do you think? Do you think he was standing up and holding on his arm? Okay, Abby thinks you lying down. Okay, interesting. Huh. So let's listen. Maybe we'll find out more. But yeah, this is finally we're getting some answers, right? I feel like we're getting closer.
At least
No,
4
Voir Dire.
striations, the way I see it, at least 4 striations that I believe are caused from the teeth towards the front of the mouth near the arch. It appears that there's an
Abby
arch
is in
pattern
heaven
here.
right now, right?
So
In a dog
This is her
attack or an
language.
animal attack, in your experience, let me take this one down.
She might give an
Just-
opinion about that,
let's
right?
cover the ground on the 3 exhibits that we've
Like
already.
it may not come out in Voir Dire, but she'll probably give an opinion as to what we were just discussing, whether the dog was laying down or standing up.
Is this just may I publish, Your Honor? Yes, I apologize. Is this just a close-up of the same injuries?
yes,
And do these appear to be consistent with what you just testified to in terms of either teeth or claw marks, especially as it relates to the area closest to the elbow?
yes,
And then looking at exhibit 3. May I publish?
Yes.
Is this a close-up view of the area closer to the wrist that indicated those parallel, you use the word striations?
yes,
All right, and these appear to be taken, attendant to the autopsy as opposed to the other photograph, exhibit 2, that was taken in the hospital. Is that right?
that is correct.
All right. And would the time difference account for the slight change in the nature of the wound?
It could,
Photograph of the wound, I guess?
it could, or a different technique, yes.
Okay, let me take these down. Did you take into consideration the lack, in coming to your opinion and conclusion, the lack of other injuries, for instance, fractures, broken bones, or deep bruising, soft tissue injuries?
But
Oh, yes.
How did that play into your opinion?
yeah,
Well, so
Yeah.
of course I considered, what else could have caused these wounds, and before coming to my conclusion. And
injuries.
and so I wanted to rule out other things, and
Yeah.
there were no
Wow.
significant major bodily injuries that, outside the head. There was nothing. There were no fractures of the long bones, the chest, the pelvis, the arms. So yeah. So having seen hundreds and hundreds of car accident victims and people hit by cars, I ruled that out very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in
Amazing.
terms of
Amazing how
the injuries that you did see, especially as they're attendant to the arm,
all of this
based
is
on
the
everything that we've
you
discussed today,
guys.
is it your opinion based on a reason?
Okay, couple things. All of this is the reason why I've been saying all along the Commonwealth's not going to call a medical examiner, because the medical examiner is probably going to say shit like this that makes it seem like it was not a car accident, right? I mean, this is it's very, and what she's saying, here's the thing, if you're on the jury, right, we know they're going to listen to they're going to use their common sense. And it's like, this makes sense, common sense wise, what we're hearing, right? Super Planet Girl asked her daughter, Lainey, dog bite or plastic from a car accident? She said, car accident first bit. I think there might be a typo there. So Abby's looking at her dog's teeth meanwhile. But did you specify plastic from a taillight? Although I don't know that Lainey's old enough to have much experience with taillights, but like I'm thinking remember Abby, Chloe, the dog that is in question here was a German Shepherd who was in the police dog academy thing and like failed out. So you think about like, here's what I'm thinking about, guys. Think about like in those videos that you see where they're training them and they have the thing on their arm, right? And they try to make the dog come and jump on. The dog jumps onto the arm to take the person down, and they put their mouth in the middle, right? And they put their claws on either side to take the person down. That's what I pictured. That's what I pictured, but I don't know anything. So, right. Did they find any plastic in the wounds? Right. I know. Again, so she, you know, things we won't know without a medical examiner, but they don't look deep enough, right? But the other thing is that I was thinking of is this, so like what this witness is saying makes common sense. And I'll look at where I just paused it just randomly, right? But look at John O'Keefe's brother. Imagine, we've talked about this before. Imagine if you're the family and you're realizing, like, when is it going to sink in that this could have been not Karen, but the Alberts or somebody else, right? And that the Commonwealth is fucking y'all over. I don't know, man. I don't know. Oh, your dog has an underbite. So that might change things a little bit. Yeah. I mean, unless he's averting his eyes because they're graphic images, but I don't know. Let's see.
Degree of scientific certainty that those injuries are consistent with an animal attack.
I don't think that's what it is.
Vehicular pedestrian incident.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Mr.
All right.
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Let me take you back to, you were talking about some police training that you had received when you were in the academy or while you were working with the police department here in Massachusetts. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, what
So crazy.
training did, what did that training consist of?
Yeah, you want to hear
Well,
what
I attended and graduated from the standard police academy at that time. And then I took additional courses that were offered from the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council. And these were taught generally by experts in their fields. And they were on a variety of subjects that are listed in, in my CV, included, the hit and run accident investigation, forensic.
There, just for a minute, ma'am. Just doctor, in reference to your training as it pertains to hit and run accidents, what did that training consist of?
Oh, well, mechanisms of how accidents occur, mechanisms of how to determine, what vehicle was involved in an accident. I don't, it was a long time ago, but yeah. So determining if people were struck by vehicles, what vehicle was involved, or if it was auto versus auto accident, what vehicles were involved.
And I don't mean to belittle this training whatsoever, but is it fair to say that
Yeah,
it was
well,
relatively
you can't
rudimentary
if
training
you
that you
provide
received in the academy?
Probably, I would not. Yes, okay, probably. If
You don't have any training in crash reconstruction or anything like that, correct?
No,
that is correct.
for real.
And am I correct? And you indicated that you're board certified in emergency medicine, is that right?
That's correct.
And so you're not board certified in forensic pathology or anatomical pathology or any kind of pathology?
That's correct.
And the last time that you worked as a coroner, when was that?
Last time was in 1995 when I was doing autopsies for the coroner's office. I have since, though, consulted on some cases from the LA coroner's office.
What, about 30 years ago? Is that am I right?
For autopsy, yes.
Now, have you ever testified in a case in which either Mr. Jackson or Attorney Little were counsel?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And when was it that you first were contacted in reference to this case?
The first contact was May 15th.
May 15th of what year?
May 17th, excuse me, of this year, 2024. Yes.
Contact.
And you went through a list of things that you were providing and you reviewed, and you mentioned hospital photos, correct?
Yes.
Autopsy photos, is that correct?
Yes.
An autopsy report, is that correct?
Yes.
Grand jury testimony from the medical examiner, is that correct?
Yes.
A neuropathology report, is that correct?
Yes.
A toxicology report, is that correct?
Yes.
And then I think you also remembered some photos of some clothing items, is that correct as well?
Yes, a shirt. And
Anything else?
yeah, hospital ER record.
Hospital ER records.
Yeah, yes.
Anything else that you can think of?
No.
Did you ask for anything else to review?
No.
Were you told of any other material that was available for your review that you weren't then given?
Well, I requested that that I focus in on the wound, so I didn't ask for a lot of material in this case.
But fair to say that you were looking for anything and everything, material to the wounds that you were asked to look at, correct?
Please say that again.
Sure. Fair to say that you would want to look at anything and everything that was related to the wounds that you were asked to look at, correct?
Yes.
And so, did you make any specific requests as to what material you were provided, or were you just handed some material or forwarded some material and you looked at what you were given?
No, I requested that I have the autopsy photographs, the ER records, the ER photographs. I requested those.
Now, you mentioned some articles that you had written that were published back in 1996 and 1997 related to dog bites. Is that right?
Yes.
Are those publicly available articles?
Yes.
And in those articles that you wrote, you were talking about law enforcement bites, correct?
Yes.
So law enforcement canine bites.
Interesting.
Bite and hold technique. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So is there a difference between, through your experience and the hundreds of dog bites that you've seen, is there a difference between what you would observe from a dog bite from a law enforcement canine?
Okay, here we go, guys. This is.
Well, yes. Now,
So he's hard to hear. Let me just explain what he just said. So he was saying that the papers that she published were not just specifically on dog bites, like a person getting attacked by a dog. They're specifically on law enforcement dog bites. So like what I was saying, right? A German Shepherd, the type of training they have to take down a fugitive or what have you. So he's asking he just asked her, I can't wait to hear her answer. Is there a difference in what you would observe with a normal dog bite versus a law enforcement dog bite? And again, we know Chloe was trying to be a law enforcement dog, but she failed.
One of those studies was over 700 dog bite wounds, and there were two techniques used at that time: bite and hold, and later on bark and hold, or bark and alert, or something of that nature. So there are different techniques, but yes, to specifically answer that question, which was, are they generally different from regular
Yeah, I would imagine they are.
domestic dog bites? Yes.
Now, did you write a report in regard to your opinion that you testified to here today?
No.
Why not?
I don't think there was much time, and I didn't know if I was going to be actually testifying.
That's a
How long
great
would
answer.
it take you to write a report?
I wasn't asked to write a report. Excuse me.
So here, okay,
Specifically not to write.
hold on.
No.
Okay, that's a great answer. We've talked a lot about the nature of these reports in different trials that I've covered, like Duffy Heard, Murdoch. I know specifically we've talked about them in both of those. But remember, if an expert witness writes a report, they have to turn the report over to the other side. So it's a whole strategic thing. I'm sure y'all have all heard it. They always will ask, were you asked to write a report? Did you write a report? Because here's the thing, it's a gamble, right? If they write a report, it can actually look really good, right? Like it can look like, oh, you have a report. And if they write a report, I believe they can actually publish it as like a demonstrative as well for the jury. I don't know that it can get turned over into evidence like for the jury to take back, but I think they can use it as a demonstrative. But it's almost like, I think that the attorneys think that a jury would expect them to write a report. That might just be attorneys thinking that. I don't know that a jury without any experience, like a juror wouldn't know what a report, like, you know what I mean? They may not be thinking that. But anyway, so there could be value in writing a report. But the downside of writing a report is then the other side gets the report. And that gives them, even if your expert is great and everything they're testifying to is great, it just gives them more to work with to prepare ahead of time to bring in another expert to refute certain things, because we know that's what always happens. But in this case, her answer was great, because she says, well, there wasn't time. There wasn't time. And she was like, I didn't know if I was going to be testifying, which is why we're here, because we didn't know she was going to be testifying. And that's what this voir dire is for. At this point, her sitting here on the stand, she still doesn't know if she's going to be testifying or not. So that was a great answer as far as the report goes.
Now, at any point in time, did you ever look at anything related to Mr. O'Keefe's head injury?
Oh, yes.
So you reviewed reports in relation to that, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any opinions as it pertains to that?
I would rather defer to the pathologist and neuropathologist on that.
Great. So she's not going to testify beyond her scope. Excellent. What a difference.
So who contacted you about this case?
I contacted a district attorney that I had worked with in the past. We were discussing a different case, a case I autopsied in 1995. And I mentioned that I heard that there was a case in Massachusetts that might have been being handled by one of his colleagues, his former colleagues, and that there was an issue of whether something was a dog bite, and that I might be able to help in that case, to clarify.
So she reached out,
So
just like
when
I was.
you were provided this material, what is it that you were specifically asked to do?
To look at the wounds and the reports and the materials that were sent to me and render an opinion.
And so before you had even been provided any material, before you had even looked at anything, you had already heard information related to there being a dog bite involved in this case, correct?
I had heard that there was a controversy.
Yeah.
That some certain wounds could have been a dog bite versus perhaps inflicted by a motor vehicle. That's what I had heard.
And
So
she's like,
what I'm really trying to get at, Doctor, is sort of the timeline. Okay, so you hear about this. When was that?
Sometime just before May 17th.
So sometime just prior to that, you hear about some controversy in a case in Massachusetts involving a dog bite. On May 17th, you get reached out to by who specifically?
His name is John Lewin. He's an attorney in the LA District Attorney's Office.
oh,
And then who did you talk to after that?
I reached out to him. I said I might be able to clarify. And then he reached out to Mr. Jackson, I believe, and then Mr. Jackson contacted me.
And
wow.
I'm not asking specifically anything you spoke about, but at some point, the discussion came specifically to dog bites, correct?
He sent me the materials. He asked me my opinion.
Mentioned the materials, asked you your opinion. When did you provide that opinion?
Probably the next day. Yes, I know it was the next day.
So the very next day on May 18th, you provided an opinion.
This is very similar to Morgan Knight in Be Heard, and then the GM guy in Murdoch, where they just happened to hear about it. And I mean, in both of those cases, that was really fucking important, right? The person happened upon it. It's like, and same here. Like, this is the expert they need. This is incredible. Oh yeah, first, yeah, I didn't even point that out. So thank you, DSN. I've done the damage I need to do on Jen McCabe. Yeah, boss move for sure. So yeah, so isn't it crazy? It's just like, you know, whatever you want to call it, fate shines upon you or whatever the saying is. And this lady fell into their lap. Amazing.
Yes,
And was that opinion provided in a written fashion, orally? How was that provided?
orally.
So you reached out or to someone shortly before May 17th, spoke to Mr. Jackson on the 17th, received all the material, and then had an opinion by May 18th.
Yes.
But you didn't write any of that down.
No.
Now, beyond the materials that you were provided, what else were you told about the case?
I was told that the victim was a police officer. The decedent is a police officer. I was told that the defendant had been charged, and I was told that that there was a controversy about whether or not these injuries had been caused by a motor vehicle. And I was also told, and I read in the medical record, that the decedent was found outdoors, I believe in the snow, and hypothermic.
Now, in regard to what you reviewed, you didn't review any investigative reports, is that correct?
That is correct.
You didn't review any witness statements, is that correct?
That's correct.
You didn't review any lab reports as far as from the forensic lab or anything like that?
I reviewed the toxicology report.
Beyond that, any other?
If it was part of the autopsy report, I reviewed it.
You reviewed everything attendant to the medical examiner's file, is that correct?
Yes,
But nothing from the lab beyond that?
don't believe I did.
Now, this first instance, when you say you heard about it, how did you hear about it?
Well, I believe it was via a headline that I received in my email from the from Boston Globe headline.
Oh.
It was some kind of there was some kind of interesting case, and I got it as an email, and I looked into it.
And when was that?
Well, that was that week in May. That just a few days before May 17th.
You subscribed to the Boston Globe online?
I did at that time. I have not renewed it.
How long had you been a subscriber to the Boston Globe?
I'm going to allow it.
Probably a year or 6 months, 6 months to a year.
There was never any headlines or anything else that you saw about this prior to that week just before May 17th?
Not that I paid attention to.
I have nothing further.
Anything further, Mr. Jackson?
Nothing further.
All right, so since this is a voir dire, I get to ask questions, doctor?
Oh,
So
yes,
I just have a couple of questions for you. I don't think I really heard you. So could you tell me again what your opinion is and to what degree you hold that opinion?
Yes. These injuries in the arm are, my opinion is that they are the result of animal bites or scratches.
And do you know what kind of animal?
Oh, yes, most likely dog, large dog. And I'm very very sure to, what's the word I want? Medical certainty, very
All right, so that
high
this
degree of medical certainty.
reasonable degree of medical certainty.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and another question. So I received information that you also viewed all reports associated with Chloe, a dog's prior bite history. Did you review those?
No, I don't recall ever seeing anything like that.
That you also reviewed the UC Davis DNA testing results submission forms?
No, I don't recall seeing them.
Okay, any follow-up, any questions based on my questions?
Not for the Commonwealth, no.
No, Your Honor.
All right, you are all set, doctor. I don't know yet whether you'll be testifying. Okay, we'll try and let you know. Are you going to be around for a few days?
No.
Okay, we'll let you know as soon as we can, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Thank
All right. Thank you.
Interesting. Where did Judge Bev hear that then? Like from who? From Wally? Very interesting.
So I would like to hear argument on this witness before we hear
Okay.
the other witnesses. So, and Ms. Giannetti, I asked you the other day whether she reached out to you or you reached out to her, and you said there was an intermediary. But my concern was whether she came out of nowhere and reached out about this case, and that seems to sort of.
It wasn't Mr. Unetti, it was me.
Okay, all right. So the question I asked was answered pretty much by this witness, whether she saw something and decided she wanted to come forward. All right, it's the Commonwealth's motion. What are you asking me to do? Again, I found a violation of Rule 14. And there are two concerns here: the competency of the witness's testimony, how much she can testify to, whether she should testify at all. What is it you're asking me, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, I'm asking that the witness be excluded from testifying in the trial for the violation of Rule 14, specifically, I believe it's Rule 14A6. This is a witness, as the court picked up on, that reached out, albeit through an intermediary, with reference to just sort of discovering or coming upon this case in several weeks into the trial. It is concerning given the fact that the witness represented that she had a subscription to the Globe Online, received word of this, and the first time that she had ever seen it or it had grabbed her attention was in that first week of May when, as the court is well aware, there's been widespread media coverage, particularly through the Boston Globe, for years at this point. The limitations of the testimony, it's also concerning because the disclosure from counsel indicated, again, as the court had noted, I didn't want to get into too much as far as for purposes of this voir dire, but there was additional material that was indicated in the disclosure that the witness had reviewed, including the UC Davis related to the canine DNA or the lack thereof, as well as, forgive me, the dog bite history of that specific dog, which also, I would note for the court, includes photographs of what a dog bite from that specific dog looks like. And that specifically apparently was not provided to this witness, who's then opining on, inferably at least, that that dog was the cause of these particular injuries. However, was not shown specifically anything to do with that bite history as far as by way of reports or photographs. So that juxtaposed or coupled with the immensely late disclosure. I mean, we're talking about at least the 6th week of trial by the time this witness is even mentioned, not on the defendant's witness list, not mentioned at any point in time during the pendency of the case, and then sort of pops up in the middle of May, and to the point that the limited amount of material or information that's provided by counsel as far as disclosure opinion doesn't come until today. So for all those reasons, Your Honor, the Commonwealth is requesting that her testimony in its entirety be excluded from this trial.
Jackson?
Your Honor, exclusion is the highest form of punishment. It's the highest form of sanction the court has available to it. Just to put a fine point on it, it is a dire remedy. And I know the court has mentioned 2 or 3 times, I'm finding a violation of Rule 14. That sounds as if the court is suggesting or has inferred that we did something wrong.
Right.
We didn't do anything wrong. Because the court learned, I didn't reach out to her. She reached out and said, hey, look, I've got some experience with this.
I asked you that the other day, though, and I was told that you reached out to her through an intermediary. I wasn't told she reached out to you through an intermediary.
I know that there's a difference. I mean,
What I was trying to get at is this somebody who read about this case and said, you know, I want to be part of that. That's what I was trying to get at. I think it was pretty clear, Mr. Jackson. Go ahead, continue with your argument.
okay, I did not misrepresent anything.
I didn't say that.
I take offense at the court's tone.
Okay.
Yes, you did say that.
Okay. Okay.
You said,
Okay.
I just heard the testimony. And
All right. Let me pause this real quick. So let me say a couple things. First of all, I don't remember Judge Bev making that distinction. We listened to that argument. We read the motion and we listened. I don't remember Judge Bev making that distinction. There's been a couple times where Judge Bev has actually gotten these things wrong, and Jackson's been right, or Yanetti's been right. But it's a tough position to be in because you don't want to tell the judge she's wrong. That's the first thing. Second thing, where this has happened before with these other experts, like for example, with like in other trials where there's been an expert witness who comes in late, who heard about or a lay witness, right? Like again, like using Morgan Knight as an example, but then there's been other cases in other trials. What they've done is they've asked them like, did you know anything about the case? Were you watching it or whatever? And I remember there were even times, it was a recent trial, where somebody actually had been like following the trial or watching the trial or whatever. And then once they learned that they were going to be a witness, then they stopped. So just to give some context here in terms of how we think she might rule, right? This court is weird in a lot of ways. Again, like for example, they've not been tendering officially any expert witnesses, at least the Commonwealth hasn't. But also, we've not heard anything about the witness exclusionary rule. And usually we hear that in every trial. Think about every other trial, right? The first thing they ask every witness is like, have you read anything about this case? Have you heard anything about this case? Have you blah, 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 anything about this case, right? And the only exception I could think to that was Murdoch, because there was no witness exclusionary rule. In fact, everyone was encouraged to be in court every day watching, and everybody saw everybody else's testimony. But that was very obvious, and that was kind of made clear. Now, in this case, we've not heard anything about a witness exclusionary rule. They've not been asking any witnesses when they get on the stand if they've been watching anything, blah, blah. The only exception to that was Trooper Paul, who saw the video on court TV, right? And then now with this witness in Voir Dire asking, because Lolly's like, oh, the Boston Globe and whatnot, right? So my point is this, is that we've not heard officially any witness exclusionary rule. However, if there is one and no one's talking about it and no one's asking witnesses about it when they take the stand, from everything that I've seen in other trials, similarly, the fact that she said that she stopped reading it and whatnot, and it seemed very limited, that usually wouldn't be a problem anyway. But my question to y'all is this: what do you think? Is she going to be allowed to testify or not? What do you guys think is going to happen? Let's hear a little bit. They're going to be fighting, I guess, over the specifics of how they talked about this the other day. For anyone who's wondering, can't they just pull up a transcript? No, those transcripts take a lot of time to prepare. But that could settle this. Now let's see what happens. But I want to know what you guys think. Should allow her or not?
Los Angeles DA's office. I received a text message from that person saying there's someone who reached out to me who said I might be able to elucidate on this controversy concerning the dog bites. I then reached out to her. So when you asked me who reached out to whom, I reached out to her through an intermediary, my friend in the DA's office.
Right.
Back in Los Angeles.
No, that makes sense.
So maybe it wasn't clear what I was looking for. I think it was clear. Go ahead, continue with your argument on this.
My point is, Rule 14 requires a sanction if, in fact, the attorney has done something wrong. In other words, it connotes the idea that we're doing something by actively hiding evidence or holding back evidence or not providing evidence that you know you're going to use at some point in an effort to take a tactical advantage. And the sanction for that is exclusion. I've never met this woman. First thing I laid eyes on her was during the process after she flew out here to engage this Voir Dire process. She indicated I could potentially provide some information about this controversy concerning dog bites. I then sent her materials. I talked to her. I sent her materials. I found her to be incredibly credible. I found her to be experienced, and I found her to be knowledgeable in this very specific area, which is rare. There's nothing
Imagine too.
published.
This is crazy. Imagine if you're that lady. She flies all the way out here just for voir dire, and then what if Judge Bev's like, yeah, you can't even testify. Like it's amazing that she would fly out all this way for voir dire on like a moment's notice anyway. Like, but like, wow, holy shit. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he gets in trouble or not.
So I thought it makes sense for me to reach out to her and talk to her, which is exactly what we did. And within a couple of days, literally, you could almost count it by the hours of me receiving her information, we then had a discussion amongst ourselves. Is there somebody that we want to then present on the defense side, on the defense case, and we turn the information over to Mr. Lau. I understand.
It
was
made a lot
well into the
happen.
trial, but that's not a fault of ours, and I don't think the sanction of exclusion is necessary or appropriate to punish Ms. Reed from having an experienced witness testify in rebuttal to ultimately what Dr. Scordi-Bello and the Commonwealth is going to present in their case in chief. That's what she's going to do. She's going to present contrary evidence or an alternative theory of where those injuries
Hold
came
on.
from.
Dr. Scordi-Bello is going to testify. You guys, hold on. We just heard it. That's a new one. Copper Horse. Hey, breaking news. Dr. Scordi-Bello is going to testify for the Commonwealth, he says. You're kidding. Why would they not have put her up first? Oh my God. Before he said that, I was going to pause for another thought. I'm so happy you're here, Copper Horse. Fuck. What was I going to say? They had to make a lot happen really quickly. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The other thing is we have to remember that this is a criminal trial. It's hard because Karen's not been talked about very much. Neither has the victim. But in a criminal trial, the rights of the defendant are really important. So what I was going to say, I'm going to back it up for two reasons. One, I wanted to replay it anyway. The part where he says something like, you know, to punish the defendant, right, by not letting her testify. I'm so glad he mentioned that because that's a great point, right? We don't want to prejudice the defendant, but also we're going to hear him mention, I'm going to put it on normal speed. We're going to hear him reference Dr. Scordi-Bello, who's the medical examiner, and that she's going to testify. I wonder if she heard what Trooper Proctor said about her. All right, let's take a listen.
It is necessary or appropriate to punish.
I did not hear them
having
say she was going to testify.
Testify in rebuttal to ultimately what Dr. Scordi-Bello and the Commonwealth is going to present.
I have not. Did you guys hear that?
She's going to present.
I'm still in shock. I'm going to rewind it. Did you? I had not. Okay. Super Planner Girl, are you saying they mentioned it yesterday about Dr. Scordi-Bello testifying? They've referenced her name a lot in terms of the autopsy, but not. I had not heard that. And people were still talking about was she going to get testify or not. So I don't think this would be the first. I'm going to back it up a little bit more. All right.
A discussion amongst ourselves. Is this somebody that we want to then present on the defense side, on the defense case, and we turn the information over to
I know.
I understand
Yes.
that it was well into the trial, but that's not a fault of ours, and I don't think the sanction of exclusion.
Okay, so so here's this is great way he's laying this out. So the Rule 14, which is the reciprocal discovery violation, that's what the Commonwealth is saying happened here. The penalty for that is typically sanctions, he's saying. Now, what's that mean? Sanctions is like punishment against the attorney, okay? And that can be done in a myriad of ways. But the way the rule is laid out is saying that like if they had the information and withheld it. His point is they didn't have the information because they didn't know she existed and they didn't know she was going to so the sanctions are not applicable. After you move past sanctions in terms of this rule, it's then is there a prejudice to the defendant? So that's why I love the way he's laying this out. Also, for anyone who missed it, I was saying Runkle, I said at the beginning of the stream, Runkle had made a comment about Trooper Paul saying something like, you could take a bowling ball and stick a nose on it and it would be more competent. So there's that.
It is necessary or appropriate to punish Ms. Reed from having an experienced witness testify in rebuttal to ultimately what Dr. Scordi-Bello and the Commonwealth is going to present in their case in chief. That's what she's going to do. She's going to present
I can't believe
contrary evidence or alternative theory of where those injuries came from.
Interesting.
To a person. Everybody on the Commonwealth side who can elucidate about this has said those injuries come from a tail light, including Mr. Paul. Yesterday, we have contrary evidence, and Ms. Reed should be entitled to present that evidence, even though it came late. It didn't come late by any fault of ours.
No.
And I don't believe that the Commonwealth has made out a prejudice that they can't overcome. It's late. Obviously, Mr. Lally is a skilled lawyer. There's
That's
nothing to
lawyer.
say that he
Good one.
can't or hasn't been able to
Good one, Alan.
prepare for the cross-examination or for an examination.
That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. Flattery.
Is appropriate.
That's not a bad idea. By trying to flatter Lolly, like he could. Okay, I have some thoughts. Are you guys ready for my thoughts? Here's my thoughts. Okay, so here's my thoughts. I was thinking they weren't going to call the Emmy. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it's really weird that they didn't call her already. Let me take my banner down. Okay, this is actually important. Remember how there's been all this game of chicken going on with Trooper Proctor? It's really interesting because in this case, it's really different than other cases. It's like they're all kind of not sure what they're going to do because they're all reacting to the other side. It's not like there's a clear path forward. Like, I don't know. It's wild. So like with Trooper Proctor, it was all, is he going to get called? Is he not? Which side's going to call him? And they were playing this game of chicken, trying to bait the other side into doing it. Okay. I am wondering, here's what I am wondering. I have not heard anyone say point blank that Dr. Squirty Bell is going to be called by the Commonwealth. Here's my thoughts. I wonder if the reason they did not, and this might be, okay, I'm wondering if the reason why the Commonwealth did not call her yet is because, it could go either way, right? Because they're like undetermined, right? And that's why they've been trying to get all this medical testimony in through law enforcement, which makes no sense. I wonder if they were waiting until to see if they needed to. I think okay, here's what I think. I think the Commonwealth is trying to keep this witness out, Dr. Marie Russell out, because I think that if it weren't for her, I don't think they would call the medical examiner. And here's why. We did not hear until yesterday any theory from the Commonwealth about what happened to John O'Keefe's arm definitively. And that theory was it seems like it was made up on the witness stand in the moment, and he couldn't explain it at all. And it's not plausible. Okay. And it's like, we'd not heard that from anybody. Because the thought was that he hit his head on the taillight, right? And I've been complaining the whole time that it doesn't make any sense because of the height difference. I'm wondering if the Commonwealth finally figured that out. So then they take Trooper Paul. And I guess since he was such a disaster, maybe they just decide, well, let's just throw him under the bus anyway. But this was brand new testimony that the taillight is what caused the arm issue, right? And of course, there was no theory offered as to the laceration on the head, but whatever. So I'm wondering if all that was in response to, because now it sounds like Dr. Squirty Bello is going to testify for the Commonwealth. This is really crazy, for the Commonwealth, and say the same thing. So here's what I'm thinking happened. What I'm thinking happened is the Commonwealth was not planning on calling Dr. Squirty Bello, and maybe they were planning on calling Trooper Paul, but I don't think he was going to say anything about the arm of the taillight. This is my theory, okay? And then what happened was this witness, Dr. Marie Russell, heard about this case, reached out to the defense a couple weeks ago, right, in the middle of May, and all that started coming in. And then the Commonwealth tried to keep it out by filing that motion, 2 weeks ago or whatever, that we went over, filing that motion to exclude her testimony. Because now there's going to be an expert who can testify what happened to the arm. And so in a reaction to that, so there's this voir dire, but in a reaction to that, it seems like the defense knows that the Commonwealth, well, we heard it already from Trooper Paul about the arm with the taillight. And now what he just said is insane. He's saying that they're going to call Dr. Squirty Bello and she's going to say something similar about the taillight with the arm. But a jury's not going to buy that. I just don't see how a jury's going to buy that. And so it's funny because I think that that's only happening in a reaction to Dr. Marie Russell. But now Jackson's able to say, well, we need to have a witness to combat that testimony, right? Does that make sense? Like that because they're going to have a witness come in and testify that apart from Trooper Paul, they're going to have Dr. Squirty Bello come in. We've not heard hide nor hair about her testifying, you guys. And now it's like, she's going to come in and testify that the arm, surprise, surprise, got hurt from the taillight, just like Trooper Paul, which we only heard for the first time yesterday. But now he's able to use that as like, since they're going to provide evidence to that, we need something to rebut that. This is insane. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? Does that make sense, guys? Okay, Abby, I hope you have fun studying for your test. Copper Horse is saying the arm marks tell only part of the story. Well, yeah, of course. Whether it's dog bites or not, the cause of death sounds like it was due to the closed head injury, hypothermia, and possibly. We still don't know. I know. We still don't know. If they had any case, okay, if the Commonwealth had any faith in this case at all, they would have brought in the coroner at the beginning of the case. So that way, all the other testimony would have made sense to the jury. This is insane. So that's why I'm saying, like, I kept saying all along, they're not going to call her. I think now the only reason they're calling her is because of this witness, Dr. Marie Russell. And now they needed to come up with an alternate theory. And that's why we heard that yesterday. I think this is all in response to this, because there wasn't anybody so far. What was going to happen with this arm, were it not for Dr. Marie Russell, was it was just sort of like theories, right? Like that's why we heard about it in like opening statements, right? Or they hinted at it. And then we might have heard about it in closing arguments, but no one was, it sounds like there was not going to be any expert come in and offer what actually happened to the arm. And without calling the ME, it sounds like no one was going to actually come in medically and say what happened to John, period. But as a reaction to now there's somebody coming in and who's going to talk intelligently about the arm, it's starting this chain reaction where now Trooper Paul is getting up there and saying the thing about the taillight to try to lay this credibility for the ME. This is insane, man. I know, right? Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, because now it's the whole thing with the ME is all fucked anyway. Like, again, it would have a lot more credibility if they brought her in at the beginning of trial, like in every other trial. But now it's like coming in and offering this theory that doesn't make any sense, only after hearing it for the first time yesterday from this Trooper Paul, who was a complete and utter disaster. To me, it diminishes her credibility entirely, right? Right, of course, Copper Horse. Right. No, they have to have evidence. They can't just use a theory. The jury, I've said it all along, the jury was done after the solo cups, in my opinion. But yeah. All right, let's see what else we've got coming here.
So the second part of this
You guys think
argument,
there's
and I'll
going to be a
start
lot of
with
testify or not?
Commonwealth first. So in your motion to exclude, you also raise Daubert type concerns. So
Oh, Daubert. I talked
Mr.
about
Lally,
Daubert.
is there portions,
I was
if
talking
I
about
permit
Daubert.
her to testify, are there portions focused
Okay.
specifically on
That's really fucking
part
good.
of her opinion where she
All right,
says,
for anyone who didn't see, I don't remember which video it was. Recently, it was one of the videos I did on court filings it must have been out of BK, out of Idaho. Maybe? No. Wait, let me think. I was just talking about motions in limine. Yes, okay, it was BK, because in the most recent document, they have they scheduled a hearing where they're going to talk about all kinds of shit, including motions in limine. So I was talking about motions in limine, and I briefly mentioned Daubert hearing, which is really funny because now we're hearing Daubert hearing again. So for anyone who missed that, a Daubert hearing is really interesting because it's kind of like Voir Dire, but it's different. A Daubert hearing is when they question a witness who's being tendered as an expert witness when they're testifying to what is considered to be a brand new field. So, like, I think in the example I gave in the BK document, I used, I wanted to keep it relevant to Idaho. So I used the example of the case with the TikTok psychic because that's related to the Idaho killings. And so what I was saying there is, hypothetically, if that TikToker wasn't pro se, if she'd hired counsel defending her potentially may have tried to find, this is the hypothetical, right? To give an example, may have tried to find an expert witness, quote unquote expert witness, who could testify that there's some sort of validity to psychic predictions when it comes to homicide. And if they found such a person, definitely there would have been a Daubert hearing, because they would need to establish before. So the Daubert hearing is like before getting to the expert itself, you have to validate the field of science or whatever it is that they're going to testify to, whatever they're an expert in, that has to be a recognized field of study. And so coming in and saying, like, I'm an expert, I can testify that, like, there's validity in predicting the homicide, who really did it or whatever, as a psychic, and making those predictions as a psychic. And I think she uses tarot cards, but I'm not sure. Anyway, like, that would necessitate a Daubert hearing, and they would have to validate that this is a genuine and a real thing. And after that, then henceforth, it opens that up now to be a field for other people to testify in as experts. Okay. So my thought is the Daubert hearing here would be in relation to, this is my prediction, in relation to distinguishing law enforcement trained dog bites versus regular domestic household dog bites. And that if there's a Daubert hearing, it would be because that's not already been a recognized field of study when it comes to expert witnesses. So, yeah, I also don't like the judge's snarkiness. You know, I really, why is my mouse? Okay, sorry guys. Okay. I really hope that jurors come out and speak after this trial because, you know, they have the option. But I don't know. I feel like there's so much common sense in this trial, and I would imagine they don't like the judge very much. But anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. I was just trying to explain Daubert because they're going to talk about it, and she's not going to explain it, right? She's just going to, she's talking about it with them. So that's why I was explaining that to y'all, that if there's a Daubert hearing, my guess is going to be to establish whether or not it's a recognized field of study to be able to say, okay, I can differentiate dog bites if it's a law enforcement dog versus like a domestic dog.
I guess the defense expects her to be able to say she will testify that these injuries are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle, road rash, or scratches from broken glass or taillight material. I think you have an uphill battle on that part, Mr. Jackson. But Commonwealth, what are you saying? If she testifies, what should she be able to testify to? And don't just say nothing. I want some input.
No. If the court were permitted to test the doctor to testify, Your Honor, what I would submit would be permissible testimony from a legal standpoint. I have some factual questions in regard to that, but from a legal standpoint, I think the court could permit her to testify as to the injuries that she observed, her work in history in that area, observing prior injuries related to animal attacks and whatever consistency she believes that they have with that. I do not think it would be proper to allow this witness to testify or opine anything about the inconsistency with regard to pedestrian injuries. I don't think any proper foundation has been laid for there, whether it be through experiential knowledge in relation to that, or any sort of specialized training or knowledge, or anything to do with that. Anything from a forensic pathology or anatomical pathology perspective, I think should also be out of bounds and excluded with regard to this witness. She's certainly a very experienced emergency room physician. So anything in relation to that, I think it's permissible. But as far as the experience when it comes to motor vehicle crashes or pedestrian crashes, of which the court is well aware, there are a litany of different types of interactions a pedestrian can have with a motor vehicle in a collision sequence. And simply saying, well, there was no injuries to the leg, so it couldn't have been a motor vehicle collision is just plain wrong, and not backed up by science or anything else that this witness can testify to from the very limited experience she has in that realm. So if the witness were able or permitted by the court to testify, I would submit that her testimony should be relegated to simply what, if any, opinions, her experience, obviously, and then what, if any, opinions she draws with regard to the causation of the injuries on the right arm, as it pertains to consistency there. But I venture to guess that it's likely that those are probably also going to be, in her opinion, consistent with many other causes beyond that, if she's being reasonable.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
I'll submit, Your Honor. I have no issue with, I just said I'll submit, I'm not submitting. I have no issue with limiting her testimony to the animal attack issue, the dog attack issue. I didn't, as the court noted, I didn't spend any time. I think I may have asked one question that's consistent with the motor vehicle incident.
Yeah.
I have no problem if the court wants to limit her testimony to the dog bite aspect and not the motor vehicle aspect. I wasn't planning on going into that aspect anyway. I've got another pathologist who's going to do exactly that.
All right.
But you did go through it with her, and it's on your disclosure.
It is, but I have no problem editing.
So why is it on the disclosure or what the Commonwealth turned over that she viewed all reports associated with Chloe's bite history and the UC Davis DNA testing? Why is that in there?
Because we set that in a Dropbox. We set everything in a Dropbox, and I assumed that she reviewed it. She must not have seen it or opened it or reviewed it. I didn't know. But that's what was sent to her. Everything that's in the disclosure is what was sent to her.
Okay.
Right. If she's permitted to testify, you led her through quite a bit today. You won't be able to. I mean, she struggled with to what degree of certainty she held an opinion. She struggled to what she viewed. She didn't write a report. I have to consider all of these things too, as the gatekeeper as to whether she can actually assist the jury. So I'm not deciding this right here. Mr. Lally, if I do permit her to testify, I will give you time
That is insane.
to absorb this
That is
testimony and to
insane.
find
Guys, that is
an
insane.
expert in rebuttal for this.
That is insane what she just said. She's like, yeah, she struggled about giving to what degree of certain. Ma'am, were you not here yesterday listening to Trooper Paul? You're joking me. She's like, I'm the gatekeeper. I have to make sure that they seem like they, what were her exact words? I'm so mad I can't even. She's like, oh my God. Okay, let me listen again because I don't want to misquote her. Oh my God. Ugh.
But that's what was sent to her. Everything that's in the disclosure is what was sent to her.
Right. If she's permitted to testify, you led her through quite a bit today. You won't be able to. I mean, she struggled with to what degree of certainty she held an opinion. She struggled to what she viewed. She didn't write a report. I have to consider all of these things
She
too,
doesn't have to write a
as the
report.
gatekeeper as to whether she can actually assist the jury.
Right.
So
That's
I'm not
what I wanted to
deciding
say.
this.
As to whether she can actually assist the jury. I'm sorry. I am offended. I am offended. I'm actually offended that she just said that after what we've heard so far in this case. I mean, that's insane to me.
Right here. Mr. Lally, if I do permit her to testify, I will give you time to absorb this testimony and to find an expert in rebuttal for this. How long might something like that take?
Not terribly long, Your Honor. As far as preparation, I can't give an exact time frame on that. As far as a rebuttal witness, I'd say a week at the most.
A week from today?
Yes.
Why don't you start looking at least? All right. Well, I decide I won't know until Thursday.
Sure.
All right. All right. Anything else on this witness?
Submitted, Your Honor.
All right. Next witness, please.
With regard to Dr. Wolfe and Dr. Rentschler, this is a different scenario, and I'm presuming that the court is asking for a voir dire on their qualifications.
Well, I want to know who did what. I want to. They say we. I want to know who did what.
So is the court suggesting that I go through their entire testimony of exactly what they did, their testing, their opinions, conclusions, the bases of their opinions, conclusions?
However you want to do it, Mr. Jackson. We're here today on the Commonwealth's motion.
I realize that, but it's not the Commonwealth's motion to depose our experts. The Commonwealth's motion is they're not qualified as accident reconstructionists. I don't need to go, and I'm not inclined to give them a free bite at the apple to cross-examine these witnesses twice on the basis.
Oh, I see.
I think to
Okay, yeah.
I don't think it's going to take long to figure out that they're extraordinarily qualified to render opinions, but I don't think it's incumbent upon me to walk through their entire testimony and give the Commonwealth a free bite at the apple like it's a deposition.
Whatever you want to do. I'm not telling you what to do. Whatever you want to do.
Would you like this?
Okay, so I'm going to back that up just real quick so I can explain some of that, what he was just saying.
Cross-examine these witnesses twice on the basis of their opinion. I will go through, I think, to the court's satisfaction. I don't think it's going to take long to figure out that they're extraordinarily qualified to render opinions, but I don't think it's incumbent upon me to walk through their entire testimony and give the Commonwealth a free bite at the apple like it's a deposition.
Whatever you want to do. I'm not telling you what to do. Whatever you want to do.
Interesting. Interesting. Wow. All right. So So here's what's going on here. So in the Commonwealth's motion, they weren't just mentioning Dr. Marie Russell. They were also wanting testimony excluded from other experts. Now, I don't remember exactly what their basis for that was. With Dr. Marie Russell, it's clear that the issue there was the timing of it, right? Because it was so late in the game. But what he was just saying, what Matt Jackson was just arguing there is like, he's saying we shouldn't have to do this with these other witnesses because okay. It provides an advantage to the other side. So whichever side is the one that's having to do the voir dire their witnesses, right? It's providing an advantage to the Commonwealth because they're getting to hear ahead of time some of what these witnesses might testify to, and they get to go ahead and cross-examine them. And then they can further prepare between that and the actual testimony and trial in front of the jury. And so he's saying we shouldn't have to be doing that with the rest of these witnesses. Now the judge, instead of saying, well, you know, why is that valid? Why is that not valid? She's just like, it's the Commonwealth's motion. It's your choice. So here's the position I think she's putting him in. She's putting him in the position of, well, you can choose not to voir dire them. That's up to you. And then you're risking me. And then essentially it's like, well, then you're risking her ruling that they cannot testify at all. So she's like, it's the Commonwealth's motion. It's up to you how you want, blah, 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 which is really silly in my opinion. And seems kind of like, I don't know. It's like instead of actually like weighing the issues here and working it out with the different parties, it's like, it's almost like baiting him into, it's like kind of lose-lose in a way, right? Like if he doesn't call them, she could, without any reasoning, just rule that they can't testify. And she's not giving any reasoning behind it. She's like, it's the Commonwealth's motion. It's your choice. You can call them or not. And then, but then if he does call them, well, it gives the Commonwealth an advantage. So I think what's happening here is he's deciding, well, I'd rather call them and give the Commonwealth that advantage of hearing their testimony rather than Judge Bev just saying, nope, they can't testify, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. Okay, thank you, thank you, Super Planner, for reminding me. Okay, they hadn't been provided with all the testimony. Okay, so these must be the people who the witnesses who testified for the federal grand jury. I'm so excited to hear this. That's why. These are witnesses of the defense. So, but this is similar. So these must be the witnesses that testified in the federal grand jury. And here's the thing. The defense has also not heard what these witnesses are going to say. So that would be the reason why they couldn't provide more info, because the defense, this testimony is brand new to everybody. I'm glad you're back, Fender, just in time for witnesses from the federal grand jury. Cool. I'm excited. Woo!
So, so you ever see the court the case down here and should truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very loudly into my.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Daniel Wolfe, last name spelled W-O-L-F-E.
Sir, what do you do for a living?
I am the director of accident reconstruction at a company known as ARCA,
Oh
A-R-C-C-A.
boy, we're going to get real accident reconstruction.
What ARCA is and what its
Holy
primary
fuck.
mission is.
So ARCA is a forensic consulting engineering company. We have a variety of disciplines that include biomechanics, failure analysis, human
Wow.
factors, premise
Wow.
liability, crashworthiness, and accident reconstruction.
You said that you were the current director of accident reconstruction, correct?
That is correct.
Is that a specialty of ARCA specifically?
Yes, sir.
And what sort of contracts
Wow.
does ARCA routinely engage in?
All right.
We typically work for law firms, insurance carriers.
What about
Okay. This is mind blowing. You guys, y'all, this is the time to watch. Okay. So here's the thing. On the witness to Daniel Wolfe. So let me just clarify. This witness was called in by the feds, right, to testify as part of the federal investigation into this case. Let me repeat that. This is who the federal government called in as an objective third-party witness to look at the information, look at the facts, and testify in front of a federal grand jury. I'm getting goosebumps. And boy, am I not surprised that this objective third party that was hired by the federal government has information and testimony that is beneficial to the defense and not the Commonwealth, because I think obvious reasons, right? Wow. Oh my God, 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 oh my God. She hasn't ruled yet, Patricia, on and also, like I said, we've not heard anything about a witness exclusionary rule. So this judge can decide, I guess, whatever she wants, but if we're in terms of like how weighing things out the way we see in other cases, they've not mentioned they've not asked any witness who takes a stand, what have you seen or heard about this? Like, there's not been a witness exclusionary rule. So technically that actually doesn't matter. The only reason it would matter is if she had bias coming into it already. But the fact that she read about it doesn't matter because there's no witness exclusionary rule. And I was addressing this earlier. Even if there was, we've seen this in other trials where there is a witness exclusionary rule in place. For example, Depp v. Heard. But so there was a witness exclusionary rule. There was a witness who had heard certain things from people or whatever, but came in last minute. And the way that this was dealt with was as long as once they learned they were going to testify, they didn't watch anymore or learn any more about the case, then it was fine. So even though, so there's no witness exclusionary rule here, but even if there was one, she was in compliance with that. But Judge Bev did not rule on that yet. She said she's going to rule on Thursday. Yeah, he's handsome also. Let's just say he's handsome, right, guys? I never think people are handsome. I think he's pretty handsome.
A law firm.
Wow.
The ultimate client, the military, Department of Defense, and you contracted with other entities or agencies.
That's hilarious, right?
Sporting agencies.
Certainly, yes. We've done research for the military. We do player safety for the NHL. So yes, we are involved in a number of research projects as well.
Guys, if he testifies, he's going to be the witness that testifies literally the direct opposite of Trooper Paul, because Trooper Paul was brought in as a quote unquote accident reconstruction specialist. In your minds right now, imagine when the defense calls him, if he's allowed to testify, and this is their accident reconstruction specialist.
And in terms of
God,
and its commissions and consultation, is it known both nationally and internationally? Is it recognized as a
holy fuck
area of accident reconstruction?
Yes.
Wow. Holy mackerel. And they had Trooper Paul. I can't.
Yes, sir.
Can you give me a synopsis of the professional discipline of accident reconstruction? What is accident reconstruction?
Well, I think that's a very broad topic. I look at the cases that come across my desk.
Listen,
I've been involved with.
Y'all, he can actually speak in real words. Already.
Pedestrian impacts, and that could be pedestrians getting the side of vehicles, fronts, backs, getting run over by vehicles, being struck by a vehicle, then projected into another vehicle. Yeah. I've dealt with your simple fender bender collisions. I've dealt with collisions that involve 60-car pileups on a highway.
Like, wow, like listen to y'all. I can actually quote this verbatim. There's a moment from Trooper Paul on direct examination, or sorry, no, it's on cross. It's on cross. And Alan Jackson asks him, so what is what's the word? It's like kinematics. That's what it is. Kinematic. What is kinematics? And he goes, so it deals with forward. I'm not even kidding. That literally is what he says.
Highway. So again, accident reconstruction in terms of the scope for a case, it can really vary case to case depending on the facts and circumstances of that case.
And when you say dealt with,
Patricia, I don't know who you're even referring to, but let's try to stick to the facts if we can, please.
You're talking about literally going into, from an engineering and a scientific standpoint, trying to reconstruct what happened, what the causal effects were of that accident, and what the results were, the results of damage or injuries were.
Absolutely.
What about human factors? What does that discipline entail? What is human factors?
Well, to give you an example of that, so I do a lot of nighttime visibility work where, for instance, let's say a pedestrian's coming onto the roadway at night. Maybe it's not a lit roadway and you're relying on your vehicle headlights to illuminate that pedestrian. So it's determining when would a driver recognize that individual on the roadway based upon the headlights, if there is any artificial lighting, their clothing. And then we look at how do drivers respond based upon that scenario that they're presented with. So we know that response times are different depending on the hazard that's presented to them. So if it's a pedestrian coming to the roadway, it's a vehicle stopping in front of you. So that's the application of human factors.
And that might include everything from passenger vehicles.
Maybe Trooper Paul needs to be friends with the hypothetical witness who could have testified for the TikTok psychic lady.
Vehicles, bicycle issues, motorcycle issues, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What education, training, and background qualifies you to perform the duties that you just described as Director of Accident Reconstruction at ARCA?
In terms of my educational background, I received a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from James Madison University back in 2012. along with a minor in mathematics. Some of my coursework while at James Madison included courses in physics, statics, dynamics, kinematics, material science, and your typical engineering sciences.
Oh my God, please.
Subsequent to my undergraduate degree, I then went on to the University of Delaware to pursue my PhD in electrical and computer engineering with a concentration in electromagnetics and photonics.
He talks fast. That's both. Both.
Your research area
Yes,
also
both.
include physics, in addition to electromagnetics,
Yes, sir.
optics,
Yes, sir.
photonics,
Yes, sir.
and lighting.
Correct.
Are you accredited as a traffic accident reconstructionist?
Yes, sir.
By whom?
By an organization known as ACTAR, which is the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident
Guess
Reconstructionists.
who's not accredited by
Are you
ACTAR?
trained in photographic
Guess who's not accredited by
to determine
ACTAR?
vehicle crash and map scene evidence from photographs?
Yes, sir.
In other words, looking at a photograph rather than being at the scene, that is a specialty or specific area of training.
Shout out to ACTAR.
Yes, sir.
Are you trained in Bosch crash data retrieval analysis,
Yes, sir.
otherwise known as CDR analysis, right?
Correct.
In terms of professional associations and accreditations, are you certified by the Society of Automotive Engineers?
Yes, I'm a member of that organization.
What about being a member of Optical Society of America,
Yes, sir.
Illuminating Engineering Society,
Yes, sir.
and finally the National Association of Professional?
So Patricia, I can answer this question. So in trials where you have expert witnesses, expert witnesses are never able to actually, very rarely are they able to go to the scene. They might go to the scene, but it might be a year later or whatever, right? Now he may have gone to the scene. We don't know. We will find out. This dude was though good enough. Let's just keep in mind, this dude was good enough for the federal government, okay? As an expert in this field. So he may have gone to the scene, but it's not possible when something happens, whether it's a homicide or a crime of any kind, it's not possible for all the people way on in the future who will eventually testify as expert witnesses in that case. It's not possible for them to also all have been there when it happened and to see it at the time, right? As we know, the only people who actually did see it at the time were the law enforcement. And actually, none of them even saw, like, okay, so if I use that same logic, every single law enforcement officer that the Commonwealth has called, none of them actually saw where John's body was. None of them. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, for practical purposes, you have to go off of other information. Now, it would have been helpful had they measured anything, but they didn't. But anyway, so, you know, that's why with experts, they are relying on the information they are provided. And that information does come from the law enforcement who were there. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Professional accident reconstruction specialists.
Yes, sir.
You're accredited by all of those organizations.
Yeah,
is that
thank
right?
you. Yeah.
I'm a member of all of those. Yes, sir.
Have you authored peer-reviewed articles in the area that we've just discussed?
I've authored a number of papers in the field of physics, and one of my most recent publications was that dealing with Toyota and Lexus vehicle control history records.
In 2021, did
And I
you
think
author or
that
co-author,
it is a matter of opinion, but here, this is why they ask these questions. What is your education, training, and experience? So between the two, we're going to see a big difference, I would say, between the education, training, and experience. And the jury can also judge a witness based on how intelligently they speak on the stand. They're allowed to use whatever factors they determine necessary to in order to assess the credibility of a witness, right?
a peer-reviewed article known as
Great
Collision,
point, Super Planner Girl.
International Compendium for Crash
Right.
Research.
Science, training and
Dealing with
science matters here, right?
Yes, sir.
Have you qualified in other courts to testify as an expert in the area of accident?
Well, yes, sir. Federal.
Yes, sir.
Importantly, were you hired by the defense in this case?
Nope.
No, sir.
Before
Beautiful.
morning,
This is
walked
music to my
before
ears.
You and I ever met face to face?
No, sir.
In terms of your
This is
admission
good
that you
stuff,
were
y'all,
asked to
jury.
undertake,
The jury's
in
gonna
this
love it.
case, that have anything to do with the
This
defense?
is the best. I'm getting goosebumps. This is the best case scenario because they've not, like I was saying, they're calling these witnesses and they literally don't even know what they're going to testify to. But they are so confident that what they're going to testify to is going to be beneficial to their case for as representing Karen, to their theory of the case, because common sense, really. I mean, that's what it comes down to, in my opinion, right? It's like they're that sure that everything the Commonwealth is saying is bullshit.
No, sir.
That have anything to do with the Commonwealth?
No, sir.
So a third-party agency hired you and commissioned you, or ARCA,
Yep.
with the responsibility of doing an accident reconstruction in this case, correct?
Correct.
Unbiased third party, love it.
The female to my left sitting here, you ever seen her before?
Nope.
This is so good. This is the opposite of everyone else, right? Think about
Yes.
this again. If you're the jury and you've heard all these witnesses for the Commonwealth, all have conflicts of interest to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent, they all know each other. And then you have this guy. Then you have this guy. I know.
How many times have you been qualified in other courts to testify as an expert in the area of accident reconstruction?
I think it's around 20 times to date.
In both federal
I'm
and
surprised
state
it's not
court?
more.
Just state court.
Multiple states?
Yes, sir.
Your analysis conclusions.
Oh,
and
you know
opinions
why? I grand jury, I don't think
independent.
count.
Whatever they are,
why.
those analysis, conclusions, and opinions in this case are completely independent of the defense and of the Commonwealth. Have I got that right?
It's based on the evidence. That's correct.
Fuck yes. Evidence.
By either side.
Finally. Finally.
Correct.
Evidence. I'm here for the evidence, you guys. I've been so
You and your
desperate.
team were asked to
I've been so desperate.
undertake a review for purposes of accident reconstruction of the case that's now pending before the court. Is that right?
That's correct.
Who at ARCA was assigned to the team who ultimately would undertake that analysis?
So it was myself, Dr. Andrew Rentschler, and Scott Klein.
Scott Klein has a Master of Science, is that right?
I believe he's got a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. Yes.
In engineering.
Correct.
All right. And Dr. Rentschler is PhD in what area?
Biomechanical engineering.
So that's compared to an associate's degree in the administration of justice, as per triple.
Were you provided and did you
Right.
review certain materials in furtherance of your consultation in this matter?
Yes, sir.
I can have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I'd like to use my time efficiently, Doctor. I'm going to read through a number of materials that you reviewed. Before I do that, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I just want you to take a look at the first 2 pages of that document and tell me if you recognize that.
Yes, sir.
What is that? What are those 2 pages?
These are the first 2 pages from the report that ARCA issued in regards to this matter.
Do you see a list of 14 items on those 2 pages?
Yes, sir.
Is that an accurate reflection of the items that you were provided by this other agency to review in terms of coming to your opinions and conclusions concerning this case?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Those items include the Norfolk SPDU homicide death report, correct?
Correct.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of State Police crime scene report, correct?
Correct.
The OCME dispatch removal report, correct?
Correct.
Photographs of the incident location,
Correct.
videos of the incident location,
Correct.
photographs of the 2021 Lexus LX 570,
Correct.
photographs of recovered evidence,
Correct.
crash data retrieval report from the 2021 Lexus 570,
Correct.
report of autopsy,
Correct.
autopsy photographs,
Yes.
three-dimensional laser scan data of a Lexus LX 570,
Yes.
a VINLink, VIN capital LINK report sheet for the 2021 Lexus LX 570,
Yes.
expert autostats data sheets for a 2021 Lexus LX 570,
Yes.
and publicly available literature, including but not limited to the documents cited within the report, learned treatises, textbooks, and scientific standards, correct?
Correct.
All of those items and data were reviewed by you and your team in coming to your conclusions and opinions in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to ask you one other series of questions concerning sort of who did what. Your report indicates that there were, in no small part, 2 undertakings, if I can ask them in terms of pillars: the damage to the vehicle and the injuries to the body of John O'Keefe, correct?
I would say that's a fair characterization. Yes.
Okay. And I may be butchering this a bit because I'm not being very scientific, but were you more responsible for the vehicle damage or the injury damage?
The vehicle damage.
And who on your team was more responsible for the injury damage?
That would be Dr. Andrew Rentschler.
Obviously, Dr. Wolfe, in coming to your opinions and conclusions concerning the damage to the vehicle, you had to consider the damage to the human being, correct, John O'Keefe?
Correct.
And as the team leader, in terms of Dr. Rentschler coming to his conclusions and opinions concerning the damage to the human being, he also had to consider the damage to the vehicle and the interplay of the two, correct?
Correct. We work together.
Is that, I was just going to say, is that how you two and Mr. Klein work together to come to the opinions and conclusions that are cited in your multi-page report?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Lally?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And I just wanted to also pause it to say that when talking about the expert witness reports too. So to clarify, I know we did go over this. I didn't, and now I'm remembering I did like a whole presentation, I think, on this during Murdoch. But in civil trials, expert witnesses have to submit reports. But in criminal trials, they are not required. They only have to have a summary of their testimony, but they're not required to write and submit reports.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Now, you went through a list of about 14 things that are contained within your report that your firm or your agency was provided with that you reviewed, correct?
That is correct.
Did you specifically review all 14 of those things, or was that done as sort of a team?
Yes, I looked through all of the documents.
So you personally looked at all 14 of those items that are listed within the report?
Yes, sir.
And you indicate that it was your opinions or what you did in this case that was, you were asked to answer specific questions, correct?
Yes.
It wasn't like you were just tasked with, hey, here's some facts, go do, or take a look at a crash reconstruction or create a crash reconstruction. You were asked very specific questions and you tried to answer them the best you could, correct?
I don't know that there were specific questions. I think ultimately it was an open-ended question.
But related to you testified as to two specific areas that your firm or your agency looked at, right?
Those are the disciplines that the report covers, yes.
Well, you testified about some other areas of expertise as far as human factors, visibility, luminescence, things like that. You didn't do any of those things here, correct?
Wasn't part of my scope in this case.
And the scope in your case, you indicate that it was based on the evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Now, to be fair, that's based on the evidence that you were provided, correct?
Correct.
So what did Mr. Klein do?
So as a part of the engagement with the entity that ultimately retained us in this, due to the confidentiality of it, only those who had access to the material, to the file, were allowed to review it and discuss it. And essentially, Scott Klein served as kind of another reconstruction expert to essentially bounce ideas off of and help with the review.
So for lack of a better term, sort of provided, let's say, sort of technical review of your work and Dr. Rentschler's work, is that correct?
I would say assist us with the analysis, yes.
Now, obviously, your firm and your agency issued a report in relation to what you did, correct?
That's correct.
And you've obviously had a time to review that report as far as what's contained in there factually, as well as conclusions and opinions, things of that nature.
Yes.
So is it your testimony that anything that has to do with anything factually, conclusions, opinions, or otherwise, in relation to the motor vehicle damage, those are your opinions, those are your conclusions, correct?
I would say that's fair, yes.
And again, based on the evidence that you were provided, correct?
Correct.
And so the facts or evidence or conclusions or opinions related to injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, that was Dr. or Mr. Rentschler's area, is that fair to say?
Dr. Rentschler, yes.
So we'll be hearing from him too, I would believe.
Again, that was based on the evidence or whatever he was providing, correct?
Correct.
Which would be the same materials that you had testified that you had reviewed, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing.
Anything further, Mr. Jackson? All right, so Doctor, I just have one question for you. What specifically were you asked to do?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't hear the court's.
What specifically were you asked to do?
So the agency that retained us gave us a selected quantity of file material related to this case, and essentially left it as an open-ended question. Ultimately, was the evidence consistent with a pedestrian interaction between Mr. John O'Keefe and the Lexus?
Okay, you said selected quantity of information. Who selected that information?
As far as I'm concerned, it would be the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Fuck yes,
All
it
right,
was.
And they just gave you what they wanted to give you, as far as you know?
We had no say in what material was handed over to us.
Judge Bev,
Okay. All right.
are you
Thank you very
gonna?
much. Any questions?
Is she gonna say that she knows better than the? Let's listen to that again. That was epic as fuck. Holy shit.
I'm concerned it would be the Department of Justice and the FBI.
The Department of Justice and the FBI. Judge Bev,
All right. And they
Careful.
just gave you what they wanted to give you, as far as you know?
We had no say in what material was handed over to us.
Okay.
me too.
All right.
Right.
Thank you very much. Any questions
She's like-
based on my
she's like,
questions?
she's like, all right. Do you feel like you're scolded because you should Judge Bev right now? They are. This is insane. Remember, guys, both sides wanted to have this trial postponed until this federal investigation was over, and Judge Bev said no, and that's highly unusual.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Lally?
She should.
Just briefly. And I apologize for this. I'm just unaware. Is it Mr. Wolfe or Dr. Wolfe?
Dr. Wolfe is fine.
So, Dr. Wolfe, when you say that you were asked specifically whether or not the evidence, the limited scope that you were provided was consistent with a pedestrian collision, were you asked sort of in general terms as far as any type of pedestrian collision, or were you asked specifically as far as biomechanically could say the injury to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head have been caused by contact with the vehicle? How open-ended was this question?
Offender, I know.
Again, I think it relates to, is the vehicle damage
I'm glad you
consistent
love-
with the pedestrian impact, and are the injuries
I'm glad you love being here, Fender. I'm
consistent with
glad
the
you're here. I
pedestrian
love you
impact?
also. Sorry, hold on.
And
I talked over that. Let me back it up. Because I wanted to see how much we love Fender, but let me back it up so we can hear that.
it's consistent with a pedestrian collision. Were you asked sort of in general terms as far as any type of pedestrian collision, or were you asked specifically as far as biomechanically could say the injury to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head have been caused by contact with the vehicle? How open-ended was this question?
Again, I think it relates to, is the vehicle damage consistent with the pedestrian impact, and are the injuries consistent with the pedestrian impact?
And again, the whole panoply of injuries, is that correct?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Let me rephrase. So did
Oh my
anybody
God.
specifically ask you to determine whether or not the injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head could have been caused by a motor vehicle?
I don't know that they asked us specifically. Again, they basically asked us to perform an accident reconstruction and biomechanical analysis and basically tell them our findings, and these are our findings.
And in the materials that you reviewed, did you see anything in there of any sort of statement, suggestion, intimation, anything at all that suggested that the injuries or the fracture to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head was caused by a motor vehicle?
In terms of direct contact?
Yes.
No, I don't believe so.
Nothing correct.
Anything?
Nothing.
All right, Dr. Wolfe, you are all set, sir.
Thank you.
Right? I know. I think about that too, Fender, every time I hear that. I also do. Look at his binder, his ARCA binder. What a nice suit. Handsome dude, handsome suit. Who's next, everybody? Just gonna bump it up while we're waiting for the next person. Ah,
To be mindful of the court and to help your remain.
You solemnly swear to the court case now herein to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Gotcha.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
who do we have now?
Sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Certainly. Dr. Andrew John Rentschler, Rentschler.
Sir, what do you do for a living?
I am a biomechanical engineer and accident reconstructionist.
In what area of the country do
I
you live?
need to hear his
I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
name spelling again
I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
so I can type
ER.
it.
Be mindful of the court.
Okay, sorry, I'm typing his last name to put it on the thing.
You solemnly swear
I'm
to the court
excited.
case now herein to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Biomechanical engineer.
Gotcha.
I think I have it right, but I just want to make sure.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Certainly. Dr. Andrew John Rentschler, Rentschler.
Okay, I did have it right. Okay.
Sir, what do you do for a living?
I am a biomechanical engineer and accident reconstructionist.
In what area of the country do you live in?
I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
What is your title currently at your company?
I am a vice president and director of biomechanics for the Midwest Division.
And what is the name of that company?
It's called ARCA LLC.
And what is the main mission of ARCA? What does ARCA do?
So ARCA is a engineering consulting company, and we have several different types of engineers, biomechanical engineers such as myself, accident reconstructionists, mechanical engineers. We look at crash worthiness, safety of vehicles, and other types of events. So we really do
There we
all
go.
types of work. We do litigation type work,
Correct.
as well as research and development for government and private entities as well.
Let me have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Shout out again to ARCA.
Can you give me a brief synopsis of the professional discipline of injury causation biomechanics? What is that?
So injury causation biomechanics is really applying traditional engineering principles to the human body. So as a biomechanical engineer, I look at the response of the body to accelerations and forces and determine how an injury occurs. You know, an injury to the human body is just an engineering problem. For instance, a mechanical engineer might look at a piece of steel and you know the size of the steel and the
love
shape
it.
of
I
it.
love
If you
that.
apply a
That's
force in a
great.
certain direction,
great.
that steel will bend and eventually break. Well, we do the same thing, but we look at the human body. How much force do you have to apply, and how does that force have to be applied in what direction or manner to get a specific injury, whether it's a skull fracture,
Yeah.
an intervertebral
way to
disc
look
injury,
at
a concussion. So we look at the response of the human body to different forces and accelerations in different types of settings. And ultimately, our hope is to help mitigate or prevent injuries, whether it's in a motor vehicle accident, sports setting, industrial setting, auto pedestrian impact, try and make products and environments safer for individuals.
Cool.
That's different from what medical doctors do, correct?
It is, yes, sir.
Little boy walks into an ER with a broken arm. The medical doctor wants to reset the arm and fix the arm, correct?
That's right, yes.
What does a biomechanical engineer want to learn about the broken arm?
We want to learn how that break or that fracture occurs. I always say that we kind of approach injuries from two different directions.
Cool.
You have an injury occur.
I love this.
After it occurs, moving forward, that's when the medical doctors get involved. They diagnose the injury,
Right.
determine the best way to treat it, what's the prognosis.
Right.
As a biomechanical engineer, I kind of take the reverse direction. We look at, here's the injury, here's what's diagnosed. Well, how did that injury occur? You know, how much force do you have to apply
This is beautiful. You know, I love it when you have expert witnesses like this where you learn from them.
to cause that fracture? How did the bone have to be loaded? How did it bend to actually cause a specific type of fracture? So we really kind of approach the injury from two different directions.
There,
And given that scientific
when he
approach,
says loaded, by the way, the bone being loaded, he's referring to the amount of like pressure on the bone.
oftentimes you can come to conclusions and opinions, scientific conclusions and opinions about the causation of an injury, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, that's what biomechanical engineering is how does an injury occur? Why did it occur? And in what type of setting did the injury actually occur? What type of loading and what type of kinematics do you need to have this injury actually occur?
Can you tell the court a brief synopsis on the discipline of human factors? What part does that play in what you do for a living?
Well, human factors is a large part of it as well. I mean, from a biomechanical standpoint, we look at the body, we have to know anatomy, we have to know the makeup of the body. And then human factors plays a part of it as well as how individuals respond or what their response is to different types of environments or reactions. It really all plays into looking at a specific event. How did someone react? How did their body move? How was the body loaded? There's all different types of.
On here, I've got a theory. And this is early for a theory, but I've already got a squirrel theory. Because of what he just said. How are you going to react to something? My thought is that, okay, let's say that John O'Keefe, whether he was standing or laying down or whatever, but let's just say for this is in my mind's eye, that's how I'm still viewing it. is him standing with his arm out to the side. It's how would you react? See, this is what I think is going to happen. He's going to talk about what would happen, maybe, potentially, squirrel theory, if you have your arm out and a dog jumps on and latches on to bite it, would your automatic, like what Candace was saying with her cat, if your automatic instinct would be to try to jerk the arm away. That would be my guess. I just
Factors that you have to apply, the human factors,
We may not even
kinematics,
find out until
kinetics,
testimony
biomechanical,
trial.
musculoskeletal interactions. It's all these different factors that are really involved in performing an analysis to ultimately look at injury causation.
Doctor, as the Director of Biomechanics and Human Factors at ARCA, what education, training, and background qualifies you to perform those duties?
Well, I got my Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering with a minor in Biomedical Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University in 1995. I then went on to get my master's in bioengineering and biomechanics from the University of Pittsburgh in 2002. And then I got my PhD or my doctorate in bioengineering and biomechanics from the University of Pittsburgh in 2004.
Can you give us a brief work history up to and before ARCA?
Sure. So I got my my PhD in 2004, and then since then I've worked in the consulting field for biomechanics. I've worked for a company out in Davis, California for a while called Biomechanical Engineering Accident Reconstruction. I then joined another engineering company in Jacksonville, Florida for about 3 years called Chesapeake Engineering and Design. And I have now been with ARCA for approximately 16 and a half years.
And in those positions and in your position currently as a director at ARCA, do you specialize in research and analysis attendant to evaluating and studying the relationships between crash injuries, crash forces, human kinematics, and human tolerances?
I do. I mean, that's really what I do on a daily basis, whether it be in litigation type cases or the research and development we do for different companies or entities, or even internal research that we perform at ARCA.
Doctor, what professional associations and accreditations do you have?
all of that.
I'm a member of the American Society for Mechanical Engineers, as well as the Society for Automotive Engineering. With respect to biomechanical engineering, there's no actual professional license.
I think it's a combination because I don't know that she can testify to the humans, like, okay. Like, it was just, I didn't even have the thought until he said it. His words gave me the idea when he said about, like, he said something about how each individual person will react differently, like to the event that's happening or whatever. Like something along those lines also gave me the idea that he might be able to testify to, like, how would a person react in that situation? I don't know that she would be able to testify to that on this maybe in a different way, if that makes sense, right? Because biomechanics are going to be different.
Sir, for biomechanical engineering. So a PhD or a doctorate is the highest degree you can have in that field.
Are you also a reviewer for Archives, Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation and Biomechanical Engineering online?
I am, yes. Well, usually if you publish articles in a journal, usually that journal comes back to you and asks you to be a reviewer. So I certainly do that type of work as well.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about your ongoing education, your professional education after your PhD. Have you continued your education in areas of biomechanics and high impact injuries from the NTSB?
I have. I've taken classes through the NTSB and SAE, the IPTM, Police Technology Management Training Center. There's several different entities I've taken biomechanical and accident reconstruction courses through.
So the alphabet soup, if you will, of biomechanical engineering and human factors.
Right, yes.
And you continue that today?
I do, yes, sir.
Any specific training in human kinematics?
Yes, I do have training in human kinematics.
Just out of curiosity, how do you define what is kinematics?
So kinematics is the motion of the human body and looking at how the body moves. And it's irrelevant, irrespective of the forces that cause that motion. So we're really looking at, for instance, how one body part moves with respect to the next. We can see how the body moves as a result of a specific type of event.
Just as a reminder, the way Trooper Paul answered that question when he asked him to define kinematics for the jury, Trooper Paul said, kinematics is like forward.
You mentioned injury mechanics previously.
Incredible.
In one of your answers. What is injury mechanics and how does that relate to biomechanics?
So again, that's a subset of biomechanics, looking at the response and the strength of the different parts of tissue of the human body. On a very basic level, to get an injury or have an injury occur, you need really two factors. You need enough force to cause injury to the tissue, and you need that force applied in the right manner. So if I wanted to fracture my elbow, I certainly couldn't take a hit on my shoulder and expect my elbow to fracture. Its force is exerted in the wrong location. And likewise, if I just lean my elbow on the counter here, that's not enough force. So you need the force and you need the application of that force in the correct manner to produce what we call an injury mechanism.
This is
And
great.
have you
I love this
participated
so
in any
much.
studies or research in this area? In addition to your dissertation, getting your PhD, what about additional studies and research in this general area?
I have, yes, sir.
Can you describe that for us briefly?
Certainly. Well, just at ARCA, I've worked with the United States military. We worked on the design of the MRAP vehicles, the mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles over in Iraq and Afghanistan.
As a troop carrier, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Wow.
And the issue there is they go over the IED, the improvised explosive device, and it blows the vehicle up off the ground. So you're getting very large forces and accelerations through the vehicle, through the seat, into the soldiers' spines. So we're seeing very traumatic and severe spinal and head injuries. So at ARCA, we work on what we call an energy-absorbing seat design. So when the
Wow.
vehicle gets blown off the ground, that
Cool.
seat is designed to absorb the force and the
Dude,
energy
I
to
love
protect
it.
the soldier's spine and their head.
Did you take part in the design of that seat?
I did, yes, sir.
Has that been employed by the
Oh my God.
Yes, it has been.
And our troops be utilizing that new seat design, that safety seat design?
Oh, the jury's gonna love that.
As far as I know, it's from what they'll tell us, yes, sir.
Understand. Are you also published in this field, Doctor?
I am, yes.
Can you give us a couple of examples of current studies that you're involved in or publications that you've done in the recent past concerning bioengineering
Wow.
and the impact or the association that it has with human factors?
Sure. I mean, and another project I'm working on is we work with the NHL actually at ARCA. We have an ongoing, we have an ongoing relationship with the Department of Player Safety. For instance, we helped redesign part of the rink. In every arena, they had at the end of the player area, there was basically a 90-degree stanchion where the glass met. And so players are kind of getting checked down in the boards and then hitting up against the glass. And actually, somewhat ironically, it was Chara hitting Pacioretty into the glass in the Boston-Montreal game and caused a cervical fracture and concussion. And the NHL came to us to see if we could have a redesign of the rink and make it a little safer. So we took crash test dummies, the anthropomorphic test device, which you've probably seen on TV, the automotive manufacturers use them all the time, and threw them into different configurations of glass. And now in every arena in the NHL, it is basically a curved piece of spring-loaded Lexan or plexiglass, where the players now, they hit into it, it absorbs the impact, and
We're
they
saving
glance off
lives,
the glass.
basically. Got it. This is incredible.
It is, yes.
So both from
Yeah,
the
accurate.
United States military as
Wow.
well as professional sporting.
This is insane.
They've come to you to help.
I don't know, guys. Though I still feel like Trooper Paul. I might still just. I feel like whatever he said is probably more accurate.
That's right, mitigate and prevent injuries, yes, sir.
What about crash and sled testing?
Yeah, I've performed a number of crash and sled tests. When you look at, any vehicle that's driven in the United States, it has to pass federal motor vehicle safety standards. There's federal regulations that they have to pass. And, part of that involves running the vehicle into a wall at 35 miles an hour, hitting it from
What's so
behind,
crazy?
rollover type impacts. And they have these crash
You know what's so crazy is I don't know if he's going to be testifying anything about this, but just in terms of his experience, I was actually thinking to myself, I bet he also works with crash tests for cars. But when you think about that, doesn't that also matter in this case, right? Like not because again, part of it could be, well, if the taillight got broken actually from bumping into John O'Keefe's car. So I don't know. This is crazy.
test dummies in
I'm
those
so happy
vehicles.
right now.
So we
This is
perform a
great.
lot of testing for different cases and situations where we put that dummy in the vehicle and we evaluate the safety system, whether it's the lap and shoulder belt or if it's the airbag or the seatbelt pretensioner, determine how to make the car safer. And part of that is looking at the force that's exerted on that dummy because there's tolerance values. We know how much force it takes to cause specific injuries. So we want to make sure in certain instances at certain speeds or impacts that if someone's in an accident, the force acting on, say, their head or their neck or their chest is going to be below these established tolerance values.
Speaking of how much force it takes to cause an injury to a human body, have you engaged in any testing or published in the field of auto pedestrian incidents?
Yes, I've been involved in a number of studies where we're looking at auto pedestrian type impacts. Again, a lot of times we'll utilize the crash test dummy where we'll set it up and we'll actually have it struck by different vehicles or different objects to look at the response of the body. It's very important if you're talking about an auto ped type impact, you have to know the configuration of the pedestrian, the vehicle, where they hit on the vehicle, whether it's a projection type impact, a wrap, fender vault. It really all depends on how the person's positioned and the amount of force and speed involved in that type of an impact.
And staying with that for a second, that basic subject matter, have you also engaged in studies related to slips and falls where somebody might fall from a standing position and injure themselves, either to their head, shoulders, whatever, and those kinds of injury impacts?
I have, yes. And I mean, one of the issues we look at it there is a lot of people fall, especially elderly people. So we want to look at what types of forces are being produced. You look at hip fractures, if you slip and fall backwards, head fractures. So we're trying to determine how to prevent those falls from happening and also create devices or products that can help actually prevent injuries if someone does take a fall.
Doctor, have you been retained as an expert in the area of biomechanical engineering and human factors in the past?
I have, yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Can you take a look at that document and tell me if you recognize it?
This is a list of my deposition and trial testimony.
Your Honor, I provided this morning.
Yes, I appreciate it. I had a chance to look at it.
That's about, I don't want to go through everything. That's about a 14-page document. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Let me just ask it this way. How many times do you think you've been qualified as an expert
Wow.
in the field or testified as an expert in the field?
I know, me too, Fender. This is great. I'm so happy.
I've testified probably over 150 times
Fuck
in
hell.
numerous state, federal,
Sorry.
civil, and criminal
Y'all.
courts throughout the country.
I think I meant to say fucking hell. I don't even know what I meant to say. I'm so excited right now to hear some competency. This is great.
May I approach?
Yes.
Wow. He's like, I love this. I love
Purposes of
experts.
what here, Your Honor, I would ask that this,
I
document-
love intelligence,
Sure.
expertise, and competence.
Thank you. Have you ever testified in criminal court as an expert in biomechanical engineering?
I have, yes.
How recently have you testified in criminal court?
Well, actually, I've testified twice. The end of May, I think May 31st, I testified in McKean County, Pennsylvania. For the prosecution, it was a case where the defendant was accused of beating his girlfriend to death and basically said that she fell down the steps. So my testimony involved
Classic.
determining
We
how
hear that a
her
lot.
injuries occurred and that they were entirely inconsistent with what would have happened during a stair fall.
What about another case?
And then about a week after that, around June 6th or 7th, I testified in Cambria County, Pennsylvania, again for the prosecution for another homicide case where the defendant was accused of essentially beating his wife to death and then said that she actually fell backwards and struck her head, caused a skull fracture on the side of the sink. So my testimony, again, pertained to looking at the injury
Classic.
mechanisms and determining that his story of her falling back and striking her head on the sink, it's inconsistent with the injuries and the type of force that would have been exerted in that case.
In both of those murder cases, you were hired or retained.
This is great. I can't wait to hear from him. I want to hear from him.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Like, I want to hear his legit, full.
Case in chief, not the defense case in chief, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
With regard to this case, you were.
What do
asked
you
to
guys?
look at,
What do you think? What do you think John
uh,
O'Keefe's family is thinking right now? If y'all, it's going to come together at some point for them. That think about the tragedy that they've suffered already prior to even losing John O'Keefe, and then the tragedy of losing John O'Keefe, and then imagine the tragedy that you would feel. The betrayal you would feel from the Commonwealth, who's supposed to be getting justice for John O'Keefe, knowing that they've just fucked you upside down, sideways, and every other type of way. And fucked Karen. And then imagine how you would feel feeling maybe guilty that this whole time you thought Karen was guilty and she didn't do it. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, I already know this guy's going to testify because of common sense, right? That he could not have died in this way with getting hit by a car. Like, it's just, and I think that really, let's remember the defense doesn't have to prove anything. It would be great if we find out how John O'Keefe actually died. That should be what the Commonwealth is presenting, but they're not. But if they can have an expert witness come in and say there's no way he died being hit by a car, then that's enough for Karen. I mean, even if let me clarify, even if you ignore or remove all of the other stuff that's happened so far in this trial, in terms of the investigation, all the issues, and let's say that this has been the perfect trial with a great investigation, blah, 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 but then you have someone that can come in who's like the most expert, who testifies well, and is like, there's just no way he was hit by a car in this manner, the same way he testified for the prosecution in those other cases he just mentioned, like, there's no way that this person died falling down the stairs. There's no way that this person died hitting their head on a sink. That I'm expecting him to say, in this case, there's no way that this person died getting hit by a car. That is, again, even if you delete all the problems that have already happened in this trial, that is enough for Karen, right?
We've already gone over those in other testimony, so I won't belabor that. You were asked.
But then imagine if you're his family, you're like,
I was, yes.
how did he die? And the Commonwealth did not give you any answers, right? Shitty.
See if you could come to an opinion and conclusion concerning the incident before the court now, correct?
That's right. See if I could determine what happened, how the injuries occurred, and the events leading up to and during that process.
Without going into your conclusions and opinions.
And here's the thing. This is a federal investigation. They brought in these neutral third parties. I guarantee you, because they're brought in by the government. The government's looking into it. The government in this case that's investigating it, they're not affiliated with the defense or the prosecution, right? Their job is just to see what happened and get to the bottom of it, right? They have no dog in the fight, so to speak. It's to determine it's just to try to get to the truth of what happened because of the investigation, from what I understand, right? Again, I'm not caught up on this stuff, and I won't until after the trial. But they bring in these neutral third parties. They're not for one side or the other. They are just looking at literally the evidence without any bias, right? Because here, even in this case, we know that the defense attorneys, right, people that are like, it's two parties going against each other, right? They're going to present their theories of the case. There's going to, the people who are going to testify for the Commonwealth, you know, the Commonwealth thinks that they're going to help their case, right? And so in other words, even with Karen's attorneys and with the defense, right? It's like they're biased to the extent that they want to present evidence that's best for their side of the case. But you've got these guys that are coming in with the federal grand jury, like this fellow, who literally it's just as neutral as you can get. But we also know that they are super qualified because that's who the federal government hired. So they are just going to be, their job, which they've done ostensibly already, is just to look literally at the evidence. They have no interest in the outcome and to assess it. It's the best case scenario. You know what I mean? Because they were not hired by.
I was, yes, sir.
You were not hired by the defense, by me.
Hilarious, right?
Correct?
That's correct. I was not.
I guess.
You weren't hired by
I was. That's correct. I was
not
not.
hired by the
a
defense.
completely independent agency, is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Before this morning, have you and I ever met?
No, sir.
Beautiful.
And you and I have never talked about the substance of your opinion and conclusion, correct?
We have not. That's correct.
You did reduce those opinions and conclusions in conjunction with your team to a report, is that right?
I did. Yes, sir.
And your understanding is that report was made available both to the defense and the Commonwealth in this case, is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I have nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Lolly's turn. What you gonna do, Lolly?
A few questions for you, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, with relation to your work in this instance, in this case, were there any limitations as far as confidentiality or anything that were put on you or any of your team?
What do you mean by
As
confidentiality?
far as who, what, where, and how you could discuss what you did?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly we just discussed with who we were retained by in this case. I don't believe I discussed the case with anybody else except for my cohorts who were also involved in the case.
So my question, sir, more is geared towards, at some point you were made aware that your report, your findings were made available to both the prosecution and the defense in this case, correct?
I was made aware of that. Yes, sir.
And when you were made aware of that, was there any limitations on given to you as far as who you could discuss your report, your findings, or anything with?
Yeah, basically given the direction or the request that I don't actually discuss the substance of my opinions or my report with anybody aside from who we were originally retained to work for.
Now, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I am going to show you the first couple pages of your report, specifically right down the bottom. There's a list of items 1 through 14. I asked you to just review those.
Okay.
Now, is that the totality of information that you and your firm were provided with in reference to what you did in this case?
I believe it was. Yes, sir.
So nothing beyond that list of 14 things did you have occasion to look at, review, or have any opportunity to see at any time?
Well, aside from we did do testing in this case, so we did do other
Aside
work.
from your independent testing, I'm asking as far as material provided by whoever employed you, that is a sum and total of what you received, correct?
I believe that would be correct. Yes, sir.
And did you personally review each of those 14 items? Because, and I don't fault you or your company for this, but within the report, there's a lot of weak. So what I'm asking is, did you personally review each of those 14 items that are listed in that report?
I did personally review every bit and every page of information that was provided in this case. Yes, sir.
And to be clear, just to sort of close the loop on this, when it comes to those 14 items, were you allowed to ask for any additional items, or was it just you were limited to this is what you have, go form an opinion?
There may have been discussion about if there's other information available, but I believe ultimately that we rendered our opinions obviously just on this specific information that was provided to us.
Now, as far as your opinion in your report, when was that issued?
February 12th of 2024.
So that date on the top of the report of February 12th, 2024, that's when you sent the report to the people that contracted you to do the analysis in the first place.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now, am I correct? And what I'm trying to ascertain here, Doctor, is just sort of the different roles that you and the other members of your team performed in reference to this. Am I correct in that your primary role in this pertained to the sort of biomechanical engineering analysis of injuries sustained by Mr. O'Keefe?
That would be correct, yes, sir.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but Dr. Wolfe would have been more responsible for issues related to the vehicle itself.
Generally speaking, yes, that would be correct.
Obviously, there's some interaction between damage to the vehicle and injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, but as far as your primary sort of any opinions contained within this report pertaining to injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, those would be your opinions, correct?
Yes, any opinions or information with respect to the injuries would be my purview and my opinions in this matter, yes, sir.
And concomitantly, so any opinions related to damage to the motor vehicle, those would be opinions of Dr. Wolfe, is that right?
Well, to some extent. I mean, certainly I would have opinions as well based on the interaction or alleged interaction between the body and, for instance, the vehicle in this case, and what damage to both the body as well as the vehicle you would expect. So I think there's basically some overlap between those issues. I wouldn't say that it's a complete separation.
And so, and again, Doctor, what your opinions or ultimate conclusions are, whether they're yours or Dr. Wolfe's or a combination of the two, it's all limited based on the information and the evidence that you received, correct?
It certainly is based on the information that we reviewed and listed in our report. Yes, sir.
Now, as far as for the mandate or from the agency that hired you,
This is hilarious.
were you asked to answer
This is
a
hilarious.
specific question,
Like-
or were you asked to just?
Did you hear how Wally phrased that? He's like, this is based on the limited information you received, as if they weren't given all the information. It's like, oh, Lolly, so you mean that the federal government didn't deem it necessary to learn about the high tops at the bar or how they shoveled the fucking apron for snow or who won the freaking basketball game? Right? Like, or clearly biased, conflicted as fuck testimony from corrupt law enforcement officers? Like that's what they might be missing. Like, it's so insane to me that he's like trying to couch that as like, yeah, you didn't have all the information, did you? It's like, well, but I love how he countered back when he answered and he said, yes, the information we had, like he didn't say something like we only could use the information we were provided. He was like, we were given all the information. Like, anyway, he answered it beautifully. That removed the lollyism out of that.
This based on what we sent you, or how was that put to you as far as what you were?
Yeah, the alleged
what you were doing?
part was the best.
There was a specific request that we were asked to perform and to
Right.
evaluate in this case.
And specifically what I'm asking, sir, is there's an analysis in there of whether or not the injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head could have been caused from contact with the vehicle, correct?
That is part of my analysis and opinions. Yes, sir.
And were you specifically asked to address or answer that question by the agency that hired you?
That was one of the questions I was specifically asked. Yes, sir.
I have nothing further.
Anything further, Mr. Jackson?
Thank you.
All right, so Doctor, I have a couple of questions for you, sir. So regarding the specific request, what were you tasked to do specifically?
So specifically overall, I was tasked from the biomechanical standpoint to determine or see if it's possible to determine how the injuries in this case occurred. And part of that was determine whether the injuries, the head injury and the arm injuries resulted from contact with the Lexus in this case.
Okay. And regarding all of your prior testimony, a good deal of it seems to be in depositions. Any of those in Massachusetts?
There's a couple, I believe. I testified at trial in Massachusetts,
Okay.
Middlesex Superior Court.
Do you know where that might be? I do want to look at that.
I can find it for you, maybe a couple of months ago.
Was it in a criminal case or a civil case?
Oh, it was in civil case. I
Okay.
think, let's see here. I think, yeah. So let's see. There was one November 14th, 15th, 2023, Middlesex Superior Court. That was probably the most recent one.
Okay, what number is that on there if I want to go
that
back and
one-
look at it?
That is number 310.
Thank you. Is there another Massachusetts case?
Oh, I'm sure there are because I know there's some from earlier in my career.
Amazing.
Let's see. See if I can find them for you real quickly here. Read this.
This is really amazing. This is amazing. So it's like,
Connecticut.
here's why I'm saying this is amazing. The gall of Judge Bev, right? Again, just like the other ones, it's like this is clearly, like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. You cannot get more qualified than this. You cannot get more neutral than this. This is who the federal government hired as an expert. And you're going to sit here and be like, well, I'm sorry, but are you qualified enough for my court. I how many times have you testified in the state of Massachusetts? But yet you let Trooper Paul testify as an expert? You've got to be kidding me. You guys, I feel like this is like how she has, like, I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that how she has handled this as the judge in this trial is part of the ongoing investigation. Like, you are oh my God, the feds, and it's unheard of, right? It's an unheard of that feds even do this. This is unheard. This is unprecedented. Like, and yet you think that you have the audacity and I just don't even have the words. I just don't even have the words for this. Like, and this dude's being so polite about it. I don't even know. Like, dude, I am sure they are. The feds are watching. Take her down. Take her down, dude.
Louisiana.
Right? And it might already be. If anyone else wants to Google that shit, feel free and put it in the chat. I think she has to be part of it, right? This investigation.
Oh, there's 68. I'm gonna
hope so.
put you at Worcester.
Is that a civil or criminal case, doctor?
That is a civil
Like you-
case as well.
Oh,
Like, I'm going
Year
to
was
decide
that?
if you're good enough
That
for
one
my
was
fucking
2012.
trial.
okay.
But yeah, we'll take Trooper Paul.
Any others that you
Kinematic
think of or you see?
forward.
There may have been a couple others. I don't recall off the top.
All right, I'll go through it more closely. I
Sure.
appreciate you saving me.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions based on my questions?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
No.
All right, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Wow. Appalling.
All right, so Mr. Lally, I will hear you on your motion. Now, we didn't get into the ultimate opinions and the basis for that opinion, but I'll hear you on your motion.
Your Honor, what essentially what Commonwealth was seeking and had been seeking was just in reference to that, as far as who did what and who was responsible for what and what were the items reviewed, and is that the totality of it? There's a date on the report. I don't know if that was a date as far as when it was filed, when it was opinion was rendered, when that was provided, what was provided to them in the course of their analysis. So I think very simply what Commonwealth had been seeking for the most part was covered today.
Okay. All right, I have some questions as to the scope of the testimony of the witnesses. So, Mr. Jackson, you intend to have them testify consistently with the report, everything covered in the report?
Correct.
And the conclusions, all 4 conclusions in the report?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Lally, what's your take on this?
I do have an issue with number 4. I don't think they're qualified to testify to. I don't think either of them is qualified to testify to that. That's more of an area of forensic pathology.
What do you say to that, Mr. Jackson?
Number 4 is, their opinion is, there is currently insufficient evidence to determine the cause of Mr. O'Keefe's skull and brain injuries or the circumstances surrounding the event. That is well within the scope of their expertise. Obviously, I don't think I have to beat this dead horse. They are highly, highly qualified.
Obviously.
To review all 4 opinions. And if the evidence in their opinion, their expert opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, which is what's evidenced here by the report, is that there is insufficient evidence to determine the cause of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries, then that is an opinion that they are well within it's well within the scope of what they can testify to. That's their opinion, that's their conclusion. Mr. Lally is going to have an expert, Trooper Paul, who's going to in that opinion.
And I would have kept it out. Remember, I would have kept out any medical part had there been an objection. And when you objected, I sustained the objection.
No, I think we're talking about 2 different things, apples and oranges. That's not, Trooper Paul's opinion is that his injury or his injuries, or I think he said variously that it was the blunt force could have come from a curb, or it was blunt force because the road was blunt. That was his opinion, and he was sticking to it. This is contrary to that. Both of these individuals have come to the conclusion and opinion that the evidence is insufficient to
That
support
was brilliant.
determination, and it's well within their purview to testify to that.
If I may, I don't think that's their actual opinion. I initially didn't think of it in these terms as it's phrased on the cover page of the report. If you look at the actual opinion
I
and
was looking at
findings,
the last page. Are they the same on the front and the back?
I think the front is a little more definitive and concerning. The back, I think, more as to it's consistent with a whole multitude of different things. So the fact that I don't really think that's an opinion at all, to be honest with you.
All right, I'll take a look at this more closely, give you a decision Thursday. All right, I did not expect it to go this quickly. We could have had the jury here, but I'm sure you all could use the afternoon to prepare. All right, Mr. Lally, let me know Thursday if you need, are you ready to go forward at least with your case on Thursday?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let me know Thursday if you need additional time. If I let Dr. Russell testify, how that impacts our schedule.
Absolutely. Your Honor.
All right, but I don't want that to be a concern of yours, how it impacts the schedule. That's my concern. I just need to know. All right, so anything else?
For the Commonwealth.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you Thursday morning.
All right.
All right. Well, there you go. So there you have it, guys. What do you think? Holy crap. That's it. They're done. All right. So there you go. Well, that was interesting. I find that hard to believe. Yeah, she was asked to recuse herself. Yeah. Yeah, forward and stuff. Right, you're right. I forgot stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Fender, for correcting me. I did forget the word stuff, forward and stuff. She's, in my opinion, she'll have a big problem if she doesn't allow their testimony. I think it'll be a huge, okay. Even if it doesn't all get like, okay, let's just say that she fucks everything up like this and, you know, blah, blah. And let's just say that Karen's found guilty. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's any way that's going to happen, but let's say that does happen. There's so many issues here for appeal already. And again, I say that and then I feel silly. It's like, there's so many issues that shouldn't even be happening in the first place, right? But the myriad appellate issues. But even just this one thing alone, again, remove all the other shit that's happened and just take her not letting these experts testify without any really good reason. Really? Maybe she could get away with the whole thing with Dr. Marie Russell because of the late disclosure, but for the other guys, no way. And and she'll know this, right? That's such a huge appellate issue. And then never mind what happens with the federal investigation. Like if they determine that this whole thing was fucked to begin with, then that's done, you know? So anyway, I just, I can't see any way that she could make that decision that they can't testify. That would be so crazy. But having said that, there's been so much crazy, but that will be so prejudicial though, you know? Fucking hell. It is dragging. Yeah, I know. Again, yeah, it's like they were approved by the federal government as being the best of the best and completely neutral, unbiased, objective, the best at their, I mean, can you imagine the feds though? Can you imagine how they're going to be like, what? Like, I know better. Judge Bev is like, I know better. Me and Trooper Paul know better. Like, that's a Judge Bev. Like, I don't even know. I mean, it would definitely be biased, right? Because it's like, obviously they're going to testify to the truth. And that's feds and the US military. I know, right? They're the reasons that we have safer cars. They're the reasons why people aren't getting blown up as badly by IUDs in Afghanistan. I mean, it's just like, well, not us particular, like I'm not, but like a lot of Americans are. Like, it's considered to be like, for example, like you always hear people say that if you've got a witness testifying for the jury, like it's usually going to be considered a good thing if they've got military experience, because there's an assumption that there will be at least some people on the jury who are like, yeah, but like there's not going to be anybody who's like, oh, well, fuck you. You know what I mean? So that just in terms of the way that people are reading juries and stuff, you know what I mean? It's typically, it's like that's considered to be either neutral or you'll gain favor for a jury if you've got military in your family or law enforcement, same thing. Wow. So I hate that we have to wait until Thursday. And that's actually not fair to the witnesses either in a way, because not even in a way, it's just not fair. They came from out of state and they, I guess, have to just stay there and wait for her to make her decision. The nerve, right? The nerve. It's like she's like the princess. Like, oh my God, you guys. It's like here, these experts that come in from out of state, right? And she's like, well, let me assess whether you're good enough for my court. And then let me make you sit around and wait for a couple days while I make my decision, even though this is a no-brainer. Incredible. Incredible. Like, I have to review the oh my God, y'all. Wow. Well, that's what we got for today. So tomorrow there's no court, and we have to wait until Thursday for a stupid decision. So did the experts. And unfortunately, my understanding, Fender, it's on the defense's dime. That would be my understanding, because they have to hire the witnesses. Even though this is stupid, it should be on Judge Bev's dime, but you know. So yeah, I know, Candace. So yeah, unfortunately Thursday, apparently EDB is going to be traveling or something. And I think Runkle said he's busy because he's like in trial or something. And unfortunately, I actually can't stream on Thursday either because of my lesson schedule. So there's not going to be anybody to, you know, to stream it live and give like commentary and shit like that I know of. At least, you know, that's not like I'm checking everywhere, but like no Runkle, no EDB, and no me for during the trial, during the day. Recap tomorrow. Yes, recap tomorrow. It'll be Trooper Proctor. Yeah, they are FBI witnesses, but they're not here for that. They're here for this trial, for this. So it's, if they were testifying for the federal grand jury still, then that would be different, but this is separate. So the FBI is not going to pay them to come be here. So, but yeah, tomorrow night there will be a recap for week 7. We'll be doing Trooper Proctor. And then Thursday, I won't be able to stream, I don't think, at all. And then Friday, I should be able to stream the trial live. Now, I'm trying to think. I don't think I can do a recap on Thursday either. Yeah. So the next recap after tomorrow will probably be Friday or Saturday. Probably Saturday, I would think. He does talk fast. Bye, Candace. Yeah, Lawyer, you know, doesn't stream it live though when it's happening. Like he does recaps. There's not that many people that do live, you know. Runkle's only done it a handful of times just when he was available. You know, it's like you can always watch it on like STS, right? Or like just on the court feed, you know, regular without commentary. Or you could just wait until we can go through it. But yeah, so because like I'm sure like EDB will catch up on it after the fact. Same with Runkle, same with me, right? They'll just watch it on Replay Crew with everybody. So essentially, if like everybody else is also missing it that day, then whenever everybody watches it together for the first time, it's like it doesn't matter anyway, right? So, but thank you guys for being here. Right. Yeah. And when he can, because I mean, he's still working as a criminal defense attorney. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't know much about Legal Bites. And if she's even streaming it or what, but I think she still works as an attorney. So she's probably in a similar position where it's hard to live stream during the day for when the trial's happening. So, yeah, STS, you know, STS is like the best YouTube channel on the planet. I'll say they've been streaming it live, but it's been like I I think they've recently, if anyone's still listening that's from over there, let me know. I think they've recently started having people come in and provide some commentary, but at least initially, before I was watching this or doing anything with this trial, like, before I started getting involved, it was just, they were just streaming it like from the channel, like, but there wasn't anybody there, you know, to keep you company, to make jokes or explain stuff, you know, commentary, right? So I think they've had some people come in when they can, but again, that's still sort of like, so like so maybe they'll have somebody there for Thursday, because I think it's a half day. So maybe they'll have someone there the whole time. But I'm thinking about channels where it's like there's somebody there the whole time to give commentary, like consistently, right? And so that's just kind of rare. But yeah, STS is streaming it. I know. So you might have company. STS is the best. Like I freaking love, you know, I love the best guests. Like Tim Jansen is like the GOAT. Like, you know, but the problem is like they're just like I was saying with Runkle and like with other people, they're all still attorneys. So that's why it's challenging, right? Because if you've got really great attorneys that would be willing to come in and give commentary, but they're still practicing attorneys, then obviously they're not going to be able to do gavel to gavel coverage or all day coverage, right? They can just pop in for when they can pop in. That's the trouble with it, right? Is that you want someone who is really great but can be available. So anyway. But yeah, but you know, we'll catch up. Maybe that's what we'll do over the weekend. Maybe we'll catch up on testimony from Thursday. Maybe we'll do that like on like Saturday or Sunday. Maybe we'll be like, okay, let's go back and watch trial from Thursday. And then maybe we'll just all watch it the first time that way. Because like I won't be available, like I said, so I'll probably just catch like a Runkle recap on it, you know, or whatever. And then maybe we'll just watch the whole trial day, you know, this weekend. That might be a good plan. Yeah, but again, see, Rob also is a practicing attorney. So, I mean, maybe, right? It's just hard to know. I know Rob's been really super fucking busy lately. So, right, because it's your evening, Fender, right? And it's work day for everybody else. So yeah, so I don't know if I can do Saturday. And actually, having said that, it'll be different time zone. It'll be the different day for you anyway. I'll have to, okay. I might be able to do it on Saturday. It would be my Saturday night, actually. Or wait, let me think. Yeah, that might work. I'll have to take a look and see. But yeah, it would be sort of like in lieu of whenever the next recap after tomorrow. Like tomorrow is a recap, but then instead of doing a recap on the next available chunk, it would be maybe watching trial from Thursday. But I'll keep you guys posted in the Discord and up to speed. But y'all are the best. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being Hey Squirrel. Fender, yeah, definitely check out STS if you haven't already, Surviving the Survivor. A lot of us here in the Squirrel crew are regulars over there. Unfortunately, I have not been recently because, as I've learned, it's hard to watch your favorite live streams when you're also live streaming. And like Copper Horse, who was in here just a few minutes ago, she's a mod actually over there as well. STS is great, and they have the best guests, and they're covering this trial, and like I said, like actually in the evenings here, right? They have people come in and talk about it too. So anyway, love you back, Fender. But yeah, definitely check out STS too as another option. And I will see you guys tomorrow for the recap. And thanks for being a squirrel. Thanks for being awesome. Love you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and roll the outro.